It's not letting me go live on Twitter. I'm not sure why. It says I need a premium account, but I just got my Twitter Blue Pay charged to me, I believe. Premium. Do I not have? I have premium. Well, what the fuck? No? Okay, well, for some reason, even though I got billed today, for some reason, Streamlabs is not letting me stream to Twitter. Well, I guess it's just going to be for the YouTube folks. I'm going to go ahead and grab that link, give it to the Twitter folk. And we'll figure that out later. If I give you a super chat while you listen to a song, I will. Although, if you are capable of using Venmo or Cash App, I would prefer if you used that. It's $1 a minute for me to listen to stuff or watch stuff or whatever. If you can't use either of these apps, that's fine. You can use a super chat. It's just that YouTube takes a third of the money, so it's not as good. It's not as good for me as when people send through these other means. Speaking of, somebody Venmoed me $30 earlier for a video about Videl. It says for Videl video here, and I don't remember what the name of this video was. Leafblady, you're here. Tell me, what was this Videl video that I'm to watch? We'll do that first. Also, let me remind everyone of the schedule. If you're coming to this VOD right now from the future, just know, today it's Saturday. It's all reading streams. I have no idea what Sunday or Monday might be. And then Tuesday and Friday for the rest of the month will be group watching Simone from 7:30 p.m. EST or EDT. I don't know, ET. Just type in Eastern time. Google will figure it out for you what time it is Eastern time. And then every Wednesday, Umineko visual novel. We're finally doing it. It's the number one thing I could think of to get everybody hype about in my audience. Videl and violence. Let's do it. All right. Jesus fucking Christ, that's loud. I got my headphones turned up way too high. Also, this is too loud. Okay, strike a balance here. Blink and you'll miss it? That sounds great. We'll listen to it after this video. This was requested during a previous stream. Hope I don't get copyright struck for all this Dragon Ball music that's in this video.
Welcome back to Dragon Ball Dissection. I hope you enjoyed our diversion into every single iteration of Plan to Eradicate the Saiyans. This time, though, we return to the main series. If you remember last time we were here, Piccolo couldn't maintain bladder control due to the overwhelming majesty of Shin's Mohawk, which made Kuririn the only winner. In fact, the fights up until now have been so underwhelming, I'm pretty sure this is the only time a single manga chapter manages to squeeze in 2 main tournament matches. Well, that's about to change. Match 3 pits Videl against Spopovich. He's the over-muscled bald guy with the M script tattooed on his head that Trunks and Goten mistook themselves for. From that confrontation, it's clear he's not the friendliest of sorts. Even Shin expresses a subtle disdain for him as they pass each other. 2 other competitors, Killa and Jewel, remember him though as a much more pleasant fellow than the drooling, seething brute Videl now squares off against. Videl doesn't hold back, spending the entire first chapter of this fight wailing on the guy. Even before Spopovich finally strikes back, Goku opines that there's something weird about him and that Videl should forfeit. Videl uses her Buku Jutsu to keep herself from falling out of bounds, and her next kick is so ridiculously over.
I remember this fight because it looks really good in the anime. And this is like the one piece of Videl footage I can remember seeing like pop up in AMVs and shit.
Overpowered that it literally twists Popovich's entire head around. But he's fine. He simply twists it back into place. Perhaps understandably, he doesn't take kindly to having someone break his neck, and Videl can't even fly away to safety. Instead, he beats the ever-loving crap out of her until the smaller of the M4-headed pair, Yamu, tells him to finish it, and he finally throws her out of the ring. So, this fight. Okay, alright, this fight. Here's the thing. I like to believe Dragon Ball Dissection encourages thinking, and that it attracts viewers who likewise enjoy examining this series. I don't want to tell you what to think or how to think, but simply share my thoughts. Whether you agree or not, I might, at the very least, help you to think in a new way. Dragon Ball is not terribly heady or deep. That's something that can't be overstated. But even in a narrative often as simple as punch evil until it dies, I find the phrase turn off your brain to be appalling. No, I like my brain, I'm using it. But then on occasion we get to stuff like a character design based on racist minstrel imagery or an old man attempting to watch a teenage girl pee. And it's at those moments that I step back and go, do I really have to think today? Can I just have the fun adventures?
Yeah.
And it's not because I think discourse on those subjects isn't valid. It's because certain topics elicit passionate responses, often for very good reason. I'm on YouTube where civil discourse goes to die. I get enough bile slung my way for opining that Son Goku is acting out of character, an opinion that has no merit or value to anything that could be deemed important on this spinning blue ball we call home. Suddenly we get to a topic that in a lot of people's eyes reminds them of serious real-world issues. That's scary because it means my opinions carry a lot more consequence. I don't think there's any way around that. This isn't my first rodeo.
It's interesting. I don't know. If you really think your opinion doesn't matter, why would you make whole videos about it? It seems like you want to shape the way people think about this manga to some extent, you know? Like, I don't know if he's thinking people are going to change their minds based on what he's saying, or if he just wants people to understand where he's coming from. But at the very least, you want people to accept the ideas that you're putting forward, I would think. Not consider them as worthless.
And I do have a lot to say about this. So let's dive in and hope that no matter how you feel about the content in Dragon Ball chapters 440 to 442, that we can have a calm discussion about it. I'm going to try to be as sensitive about it as I can, while still analyzing it from all the angles I want to. I have received many comments from people who feel that Videl vs. Popovich contains the most brutal acts of violence in the entire series. I've seen them say that revisiting this material at all is very uncomfortable for them. And I can understand that. This is a sequence of events that includes a large man picking up a teenage girl by the hair and knocking out several of her teeth. That is horrifically violent. But stepping away from the brutality of the act itself and examining it through the various lenses of fiction, our society, and Dragon Ball specifically, I'm going to be honest and say that the topic of this fight and people's reactions to it are things I find infinitely fascinating. I don't particularly care for violence. It's something that we as a society tend to glorify. Fiction tends to glorify it, and when it's not glorifying it, it's treating it as something that's really not that big of a deal. One of my favorite movies of all time, Back to the Future, contains examples of both. A simple comedic response to a...
Sorry, I was hoping he was going to clarify, like, I don't like violence in real life, but I'm totally fine with it in fiction, because otherwise the thought of, like, being so involved in talking about Dragon Ball, like, how can you enjoy Dragon Ball if you don't like violence? It seems preposterous to me. It's like the main thing that happens in Dragon Ball, isn't it?
Conflict is for Marty McFly to punch Biff Tannen in the face. Hijinks ensue. The only way for George McFly to complete his character journey from bullied wimp into confident author is to punch Biff Tannen in the face. Romance ensues. Come to think of it, inflicting head trauma on various members of the Tannen family throughout history seems to be the beginning and end of conflict resolution in these movies. Media certainly led me to believe there'd be more casual fisticuffs in my life than there actually has been. And that's certainly a good thing given that using a closed bony fist to
Yeah, it just
strike
means you
a
don't get
bony
out
head
enough.
is not often the relatively harmless feat that fiction likes to portray it as. It can cause severe damage not just to the recipient but to the perpetrator. Brains can be damaged and bones can shatter, and yes, that includes teeth. Violence presented in a more stylized way makes it more palatable. Depending on your perspective, minimizing the
Palatable.
actual repercussions of violence can make it seem more glamorous or not as big of a deal, and therefore encourage it. Hopefully, most of us have enough of a grasp of reality to understand that fiction is not real. We should not imitate the things people do in fiction, and the repercussions of actions in fiction don't necessarily mirror what happens in real life. And with that grasp of reality, in the best case scenarios, you should feel secure that what you enjoy as fiction or fantasy does not necessarily reflect on the behavior you would condone in real life. In the best case scenario. Sadly, that doesn't apply to all people, and there are certainly subtle ways that the media we consume affects how we view the world. But since I haven't brought up Dragon Ball in nearly 400 words, let's tie that back in here. Dragon Ball glorifies violence. It's hard to deny that. There are very few conflicts in Dragon Ball that aren't solved through violence. For the people who frequently scoff at me for analyzing Dragon Ball's story because lols, who watches Dragon Ball for ta story, I have to assume
Well,
that the violence
everybody.
is literally the only draw. I am someone who has repeatedly said I find the fighting to be the least interesting element of Dragon Ball. But
That's
when done well, the fighting is
fascinating.
engaging, both visually and how it heightens the impact of the drama. Violence is dramatic. Death is dramatic. Relatable suffering can highlight sacrifice, loss, and the love of companions. I've also said that Dragon Ball's fights tend to lose my interest once they pass the point where I can no longer emotionally connect to the damage being done. So, even as someone opposed to violence in real life, I still find Dragon Ball's violence important to the overall experience. Dragon Ball is a fantasy that presents violence in an extraordinarily unrealistic and heightened way, even compared to other fiction. At this point, these people can rip entire planets asunder. They fire destructive beams of mystical energy, battles can continue for hundreds of pages. Is what happens to Videl, objectively speaking, the most violent act we've seen in this series? No. Dragon Ball features broken bones, limbs being removed, giant holes torn through people's torsos on multiple occasions, and an adult breaking a 5-year-old child's neck. Elderly men have their skulls
Yeah, I would
caved in,
say
countless people
I would say that image of Gohan is perhaps even more intense.
are reduced to empty flesh suits. One innocent bystander is even decapitated by having his throat squeezed so hard that it severs his head from the
I
rest
remember
of his
that.
body. At one point, a teenage girl kicks a man in the head so hard that it turns his neck into the shape of a corkscrew. Oh, wait, that's this fight. Yes, even in this scenario, the most violent acts are perpetrated by Videl rather than received by her. And the violence committed against her doesn't even begin to compare to other acts of violence seen in this series. Yet, this fight still leaves quite an impact. Why is that? A long time ago, I asked whether Goku and the others are impervious to Lunch's bullets because they're super strong, or because it's a gag, or both. While Dragon Ball's stylized and hyperpowered martial arts sometimes obscures the effects of real violence, that is further compounded by the fact that Dragon Ball is also a comedy series. Even more so than stylized violence, comedy violence persists through its own rules. It's why I objected to Toriyama throwing in an explanation as to why Mr. Satan survived being attacked by Cell. It doesn't need a literal explanation, it's a joke. Likewise,
Well, that's true, but I also think that by the time of Z, it's kind of not a comedy anymore. Like to me, it graduate like there is comedy in it still, but I definitely think it transcended from like comedy being like a comedy show with a lot of action to an action show with not even that much comedy.
there can be no definitive answer to the cartoony bullet holes. They exist because they're funny. But Dragon Ball is positioned in a relatively unique way where characters can shrug those things off for real. Dragon Ball exists according to its own rules, but those rules
You're right. The
often
Boo arc does have a lot of comedy, especially at the very start of it. I really do think the Boo arc was like an attempt to go back. Like okay, we've done like the ultimate epic battle. We've brought Gohan up to be even more powerful than Goku now. Can Gohan please now be the main character? And can I go back to drawing funny books? I feel like that's what Toriyama wanted with the Great Saiyaman arc. And then they were like, nah, you got to bring Goku back. It's not working.
And bend to whatever is narratively expedient or comedically expedient. And that's where I get into trouble with my philosophy of not turning off my brain, because gags like these require you to suspend your disbelief enough to accept that the rules of this universe include the body horror of a man having his head squeezed off and a silly guy being propelled several hundred feet into a mountain and suffering no long-term damage. Yet, while these two examples are tonally opposite, they are equally unrealistic, both in service to the needs of the immediate point Toriyama is trying to convey. In the former, the effects of violence are ridiculously overplayed. In the latter, they are ridiculously underplayed. But while the sheer brutality of the former example makes it far more uncomfortable, they are both mitigated by how extreme they are. Videl versus Popovich is a fight where the extremes are largely and suddenly removed. After the point where Popovich gets his
This is a good point.
head in the game, nearly all the violence is stripped of its exaggerations. There's a little bit of flying, but beyond that, the attacks are largely realistic and imitable. The impact of those attacks are likewise far more realistic than Dragon Ball typically portrays. Dragon Ball has inflicted a broken tooth before, but that case is played for comedy and is fairly quickly either rectified or forgotten. Yamcha's not known for his missing tooth after all. The appeal to vanity is played up while the actual pain and disfigurement are played down. Even when Goku loses a tooth in a more serious context, it's not portrayed as graphically, and the tooth has almost entirely regrown itself by the very next page. It's stylistic, not literal. In this case, blood is pouring from Videl's face and jagged, broken teeth are visible. It's the same injury, but presented in a completely different way, a way that's far more relatable and far more evocative. While Popovich is talked about as if he's this inhuman monster with bizarre powers, the majority of what he does is banal. It's brutal, but it's largely within the bounds of reality. So while it doesn't actually compare to some of the levels of violence the series has taken seriously, we react to it more strongly because it is so imitable. It is something we can reasonably fear. It's not entirely unique in this regard, though. I'd say that a twitching, glassy-eyed 5-year-old with a broken spine is at least equally gruesome and equally conceivable.
Yeah.
So what else is there? Context is very important. For example, while I find the sheer brutality of Rikume's breaking of Gohan's neck to be more severe than, say, Frieza blowing up Cargo, I actually find Cargo's death more despicable, and that is because of the context. Aside from the fact that Cargo actually dies while Gohan is quickly restored to full health, there is a stark difference between these two characters. Gohan is incredibly strong, while Cargo is not. But more importantly, Gohan is a willing and active combatant who understands his situation and takes on those risks. Cargo is not. He's a helpless child who was murdered in cold blood. But complicating this discussion is the fact that context requires an adjustment of expectations when looked at through the lens of Dragon Ball because, as we've established, Dragon Ball is not reality. In reality, a 5-year-old, even an unnaturally strong one, cannot be expected to reasonably understand and consent to a bone-crushing mortal battle against an adult. The entire concept is ludicrous on its face. It's why you often see people debate the question, does Gohan have Stockholm Syndrome after being kidnapped by a demon and turned into a child soldier?
Yes,
It's valid
obviously.
to discuss, but it's complicated by how much reality you're willing to let through that lens.
He is a child soldier.
Gohan is certainly a child when the story needs him to be, but he's not a real child and is not constrained by all the realities of children. So if you look at them from a real-world context, the brutality suffered by Gohan and Cargo shouldn't be any different, but in the context of Dragon Ball's reality, they very much are. How does this tie into Videl's plight? Videl versus Popovich is framed as a match in a tournament. That is indeed a very different context than a battle for one's life or a battle to save the Earth. The spectators are naturally horrified at moving from a scene that looks like this to one that looks like this. But is that fair? How much of this comes down again to tone? If Elmer Fudd shoots Daffy Duck in the face and it causes his bill to spin around, it's funny. If Elmer Fudd shoots Daffy Duck in the face and Bugs Bunny is splattered with bits of his brain, it's not funny anymore. Whose fault is it that the outcome is different? Is it Elmer's? Is it the guns? Yep, that's right. Guns don't kill people, sudden tonal shifts do. But the act is identical both times. Spopovich clearly enjoys inflicting pain, no question, but from a competitive perspective, what is Spopovich doing that is wrong? This is a fun, good-natured tournament, yes, but this isn't a protective pad-wearing, point-scoring tournament like the ones I participated in when I took martial arts. The Tenkaichi Budokai has very few rules we know of, but what we do know is that one of the legitimate ways to win is to beat the opponent so severely they lose consciousness or at least so weakened they are unable to stand for a 10 count. Say what you will, but Spopovich is doing a very good job of achieving that goal. Personally, I'd say there should probably be a rule against lifting someone by the hair. Spopovich shouldn't be able to stand on her head when she's already down. That should be the start of a count, and I can't understand why there isn't one. Apparently, they aren't against the rules. Outside of that, he's not even doing anything that we haven't seen other tournament combatants do. Punching someone in the face...
I mean, I feel like I can summarize the whole, like, it is interesting to like itemize, to go through like all of the reasons that this scene is so uncomfortable. To me, the summary is like, this looks like a trauma decompression of like watching a man beat a woman. Like, it just looks like it looks, he keeps saying like imitable, but not just that, it's like familiar, you know? Like, I can't say I've ever seen something like this in real life, but I've seen video clip. It's like Diddy beating up his girlfriend and holding his towel up the whole time. It's like on that same frame of mind, to the point that it feels like, oh, this is like Toriyama, like reliving something is the way it feels, you know? It is intense.
Is not against the rules. Had the Goku Jackie Chun fight taken place in this darker, grittier dragon world we suddenly find ourselves in, Jackie would have had to navigate the majority of his fight while nursing a mangled, swollen nose rather than getting a cartoony spurt of blood that is instantly forgotten. Spopovich is punching and kicking. The normal things. I hate to hammer this in, but what Videl does is something we've never seen in a tournament. If she had been fighting someone else, this would have gone down in history as the time the champion's daughter horrifically murdered some poor random dude and possibly went to jail. And it's worth noting that she does this before Spopovich begins seriously hurting her. This can't even be justifiably labeled as a desperate act of self-defense. At this point, he's hit her twice. That doesn't justify Spopovich committing those two attacks that I think go way too far, but if we're talking about unjustifiable force, it's hard to deny she goes farther than he does. This moment really should occur after Spopovich has raised the stakes to a dangerous level. Returning to the context of a tournament as opposed to a battle, I have to again compare Gohan to Videl. I said that Gohan is an active combatant who chooses to be involved, but while in the Rikum situation, Gohan resolutely soldiers on until the end, it's not as if he can simply leave. Videl can. This is a tournament match. All she has to do is say she gives up and it's over. She is frequently encouraged to do so. She chooses not to. She knows what she's getting into and she determines the match is more important than her safety. That's a valid choice and hers to make. And before anybody brings it up, no, there is no moment in Toriyama's version wherein Spopovich physically restrains her from falling out of bounds. That's only in the animated adaptation, and quite frankly, I don't know if that's better or worse. What's better kind of depends on your perspective. It's obvious that Toriyama is trying to make this fight exceptionally brutal. My issue continues to be, though, that aside from a few outlying moments, the brutality is largely a result of the sudden imposition of a more realistic tone, rather than Spopovich doing things that are genuinely beyond the pale in the context of Dragon Ball. So, better in this context would mean including more elements that demonstrate that Spopovich is a sadist who is clearly prolonging the fight for his own enjoyment. I think that the real heart of this issue is that Toriyama focuses on the wrong thing. He seems more preoccupied with showing off their brutality than he is in actually making Spopovich unreasonably cruel. This could have played better with less realistic depictions of violence if it focused more on Spopovich being a dirty fighter. Instead, the violence feels like a cheap workaround to achieve that end, just as Videl's death-dealing kick exists for the shock value of demonstrating that Spopovich is a freak, without considering how needlessly reckless that makes her appear. In both cases, the lack of a proper foundation causes the excessive violence to feel gratuitous. I'd argue that Spopovich preventing Videl from falling out of bounds on its own is a relative.
I mean, I had always kind of looked at it, remembering this scene, more like it was a direct consequence. Like, she knocked his head around, he got pissed off and beat the ever-loving fuck out of her. It just feels weirdly indulgent in how realistic it is and how long it goes on for and how out of character it is for the manga. And it makes you go, that's really uncomfortable and like effective, but also out of character in that Dragon Ball has not tried to be effective in this specific way before.
Non-violent act that is legitimately chilling and better sells Spopovich's brutality than Toriyama's use of graphics.
It just kind of makes you ask, like, did anyone want to see this? Like, I certainly did not. You know, I liked Videl. I did not want to see her get her ass completely washed. And also, I don't remember her particularly doing anything other than, like, jobbing here, you know? Like, it's not like she had beat up a bunch of cool... Like, it's not like she had a bunch of feats under her belt. You know, she just kind of gets her ass beat.
Violence. Sure, the way the animated version combines that with a comparable level of violence while simultaneously stretching it out longer makes it even more uncomfortable, but as a substitute, it'd probably be much more effective. It plants the seed in my mind that Toriyama's decision to arbitrarily ramp up the realism of violence is because it's simpler and more immediately impactful than coming up with creative ways for Spopovich to prolong this fight without technically breaking the tournament rules. I already think that Spopovich standing on her head crosses a line, but it's not like this tournament seems to have many lines. Tenshinhan certainly suffers no retribution for breaking his opponent's leg after rendering him unconscious. Yet I never see anyone bring that up alongside this fight as far as tournament-based brutality goes. So, what's another difference? Okay, I've put this off long enough.
It's a woman.
I'd argue a major reason this makes people uncomfortable is found in Gohan's incredibly patronizing line here.
Oh.
He's not the kind of opponent who will go easy on you just because you're a girl. Sex is definitely a factor in the brutality of this fight. In a sweeping and obvious generalization, men are usually, on average, physically stronger than women. There is a disgusting and ongoing history of men leveraging that strength against women to the point that polite society teaches everyone from childhood that males should never hit females. It's ingrained so strongly that the idea of male-on-female violence in any context makes most people uncomfortable. And hey, that's certainly better than the alternative. This is a hugely important topic, an understandably sensitive topic, and it's a topic that both on its own and in the context of this narrative branches off into a variety of discussion topics, from how it affects men in abusive relationships who don't feel empowered to defend themselves, to debates over women in the military and active combat roles, to whether or not audiences find it palatable for women to be engaged in slapstick comedy. And those are all way outside of the scope of this video. Thankfully. But art does not exist in a vacuum. It is created within a culture and viewed through cultural lenses. For some people, it is difficult, if not impossible, to look at images like this and not be reminded of real-life examples of abuse. And that's a valid viewpoint to have. But like with the other...
And I would add to that was also what made the Gohan one so disturbing, is that it didn't feel cartoony. It looked like if a kid got beaten until his limbs were all broken, that's what it would look like. You just kind of look at it, you're like, oh, damn, wow, ouch. You know, like all the exaggerated, like getting hit in the gut and you're going, ooh, like that doesn't look like anything you've ever seen happen to a person, you know?
Other aspects, I have to step back and examine this within the context of what Dragon Ball's reality allows and what this tournament allows.
Again, to me, it feels like trauma decompression through Toriyama. Like he straight up was like, working through something with those drawings. That's how that felt to me.
This is a competition with no weight classes. There is no division between the sexes. There are no medical exams. It's only a fairly recent change to separate kids from adults. The only qualifying traits to be on this stage are to punch a machine hard and to be above the age of 15. That's it. That is going to lead to the very real and precedented possibility of a man and a woman fighting each other. Transplanting this into the real world would be a much thornier and nuanced conversation. But in this context, I see no reason why this should be treated any differently from any other fight. After all, the last time we see a man in this tournament do as Gohan suggests, he immediately regrets it.
Yeah, but that guy's
is certainly
that's such
far
a
more
different
savage
face.
than he ought to be. But to suggest that he should be holding
It really is just tone. Like, it feels like Toriyama wanted to be really edgy in showing, like, because this tone shift is not just for the fight. It's a tone shift for the entire arc. This is where the Buu arc stops being fun and starts being serious, because like the Majin people show up and they start like murdering the crowd, and like, you know, it becomes a different arc after this point. So I think Toriyama was trying to take this, like, honestly, if I had to guess, probably his frustration at not being able to just do a simple fun arc, having to work in another villain, having to make another big thing. He was probably like disappointed, you know, and Videl is like the symbol of this arc. He was trying to build this happy time at home, and he's like, oh, you really want the violence? I'll show you the violence. Here's what happens when a violent force takes the thing you love and beats it to a pulp, you know? Like, it just reads like Gundam. It's like Gundam level depressing. And DBZ, again, it is brutal. It is rough. It is an action series where violent things happen. But I do think it plays best when it's crunchy macho men beating each other up and not like a realistic depiction of a young girl getting her ass kicked.
back solely because he's fighting a woman.
And yes, cell drinking people was definitely horrifying in concept. But even as a kid, I thought that was more so cool than anything, because it was, again, it's always like nobody's, and it's like a giant syringe and he injects it into them and they die. And like, it helps if the villain is cool. Like, if the villain is a cool looking guy and the people he's fighting or that he murders randomly, you don't really care about. It's just to establish that he's a bad guy, but it immediately makes him cooler to you than the randos he ate, you know? Like, Videl is a beloved character at this point. This is just some rando big man that is, his character design says not important. You know, it's like it's the design language that Toriyama uses for not important characters. And so to have a character like that, you know, just like Samir, the first like really relevant female character in the show, you know, because he could have put like a girl with superpowers who could actually fight into the show, or he could have had it so Videl was so strong that she actually could fight alongside the Z Warriors. And instead, again, she jobs to the nth degree on this fucking brutal violence. Yeah, I'm gonna say this is not the best move. I understand how it probably happened. I have theories on how it probably happened, but I don't like it. I don't like this as an aspect of Dragon Ball.
A woman capable of easily breaking his neck? A woman who entered this competition for the explicit purpose of proving herself stronger than anybody else is patently absurd and extraordinarily condescending. If Vegeta had managed to get the upper hand against artificial human number 18, would anyone really have encouraged him to hold back because he was fighting a woman? Even polite,
No, but that would have gone
Trunks
down
blows
totally
his version
differently.
into itty bits. But I suppose that's the difference. Not even superpowered number 18 is ever allowed to suffer.
But like, the thing is, Android 18 is a bad guy, and none of the good guys were ever going to grab her by the hair and beat her face in. It's just not something a good guy would do, because it doesn't come off, it comes off as sadistic, you know. It doesn't come off as just like, this is the best way to fight. It comes off as, I'm going to grab you by the hair because you're a little bitch and I'm going to fuck you up, you know. Like, fucking most of the guys who fought Android 18 were shorter than her, you know. It just wouldn't, they could have beat her head all the way around backwards, and it would have been more acceptable depending on the context of that fight. Obviously Android 18 becomes the ultimate waifu. Actually after Videl gets her ass kicked, I do believe she's the only woman in the show who does get to actually fight with the boys because she's a robot, and actually be a badass.
For any visible damage. The fact of the matter is, Dragon Ball does not have many female combatants. This is the first time we've seen a woman suffer tangible injuries in a fight. The 2 other times we've seen female finalists in this tournament, they've been ejected quickly without much of a focus on stringent combat. But if we want female characters in Dragon Ball in major combat roles,
and also it strongly comes off like what Toriyama is saying by having the first time a woman really fights that she gets brutally her ass beat, is that he really doesn't think women should fight. Like, he really thinks that women should be on the sidelines, and like, oh, y'all really want me to write a woman into a fight? Well, let me show you what would happen if a woman got into the fight. Like, it's kind of got that energy to it, which also makes it uncomfortable.
There is an argument to be made that they should be expected to take the same lumps the men do. But you might rightly argue back, does that mean they need to be tortured? Probably not. Modern Dragon Ball is a nearly bloodless affair, and Caulifla and Kale are 2 characters who do a great job acquitting themselves in the combat arena against some of the toughest male characters. So, hey, good job. I guess my issue is that if this is going to be considered well beyond the bounds of good taste, while doing the exact same thing to a young child is perfectly fine as long as the child is male, then I find myself a little bit sickened by that. One last aspect in which to analyze this comes down to its narrative function. In the immediate sense, its impact is pretty obvious. Spopovich and Yamu are bad guys. They are the reason Kaioshin and Kibito are here. There's a mystery around them, with their similar off-putting appearances, the M script on their foreheads. This is going to lead to something bigger. The idea of a character undergoing this transformation pays off down the line, and this is the first major indication that the heroes and the audience are supposed to be against them. It undeniably leaves that impression.
What is with the
It's the
weird-ass
same
art in
reason
some of
why
these
Ten
panels?
Shinhan breaks Yamcha's leg. He is the bad guy. He takes the fight too far. He injures someone the other characters care about. In that case, Goku swears revenge. In this case, Gohan swears revenge. In the case of Goku, that ultimately results in his own match against Ten Shinhan, wherein those character threads are resolved, Ten Shinhan seeks absolution, and Yamcha forgives him. This story appears to be headed on the same track. If Gohan defeats Kibito in the next match, he will be paired against Spopovich and receive his opportunity for conflict resolution. However, that never plays out. I don't know if I think that's the wrong choice, though. Spopovich is ultimately not terribly important as a character. He will meet an appropriate end, and it's arguable whether or not he can be considered wholly responsible for his actions anyway.
He got psychopath.
Either way, I feel that this scene accomplishes what it sets out to do, which is to establish these 2 as villains, and the threat is ultimately resolved. Even Gohan's role in all of this is paid off, and in a way I feel is stronger than conflict resolution. This event serves as the payoff to Gohan and Videl's growing relationship. Gohan rushes to her aid after she loses. Gohan takes her to safety. Gohan sets her mind at ease. It demonstrates a truly tender moment between them, and unlike the gag with Chi-Chi earlier on, Mr. Satan's protestation...
That's another thing. It's very rare that he, like, in a non, like, oh my god, just like, it's not often that he dwells so much on the character just being fucked up, unless it's like they're like in the midst of a major battle. Like, there's just something very tone deaf about him Gohan making this expression while she's like this. Like, that doesn't read right to me.
Against them being in love finally feel earned rather than simply a decree on the part of the author. And unlike the "I want to cut my hair so Senpai will notice me" moment, Videl's smile here communicates such genuine affection between them that feels like a natural in-character progression.
Yeah, but
the problem with it, though,
it's not a
is how this
satisfying
moment plays
resolution
out
to
in
this
the
violence.
long term. It caps the character arc between Gohan and Videl.
Yep.
Not long after this point, the series is going to complete its return from adventures of a high school superhero to extremely long sequences of battles to save the world. And in that shift, Videl is going to be demoted from major player to random background noise. It is
Yep.
most
Oh my
definitely a
god, she's not
consequence
even
of
drawn all
Toriyama
the
pushing
way.
the series back to its status quo. Videl
I definitely think this was like this is some kind of heartbreak. Like this is some sort of like Toriyama really didn't I really think that he believed in this arc of like I'm gonna do a romance between Gohan and Videl, and when he was told he had to go back to making epic violence, I think he just was this to me reads as like I'm upset about having to do this. And so I'm just going to write out this story I was working on and giving all of my passion to. Fuck it completely, beat her ass and get her out of the story. I regret even trying. Like that's the energy this gives to me. Cuz it reminds me of fuck, what was I just thinking of that it had a similar thing? Oh, yeah, Gundam. That like in the course of continuing to have to make Gundam, uh, for like 13 years straight, uh, Yoshiyuki Tomino, he'd been directing every single Gundam up to like 93 with Victory Gundam. And with Victory Gundam was a point where he just got so sick of it that he decided I'm going to make it the most like violent, depressing, like nightmare of a series. Characters are dying every couple of episodes. Like it's just a rough watch. It's probably one of the least popular Gundam shows because it is so just bleak. And that's how he finally got permission to not have to make Gundam anymore. Basically, he handed it off to other people. They turned it into a Bandai Toy Factory thing. Like he's just like, I'm fucking done. That's what this feels like to me. Yeah, End of Evangelion's another good example, like just that moment where like you are forced to continue the story, but you're not allowed to do what you want with it. So like, there's no choice but to just ruin it for everybody, I
becomes a
guess.
casualty of that decision and only a quarter of the way through her introductory storyline. There is certainly some logic to what happens. Videl is a good fighter, but she's not on the level to handle these threats. But since her growth has been a not insignificant part of the arc until now, it feels like this danger occurs simply to derail her development. In that context, her beating at the hands of Spopovich reads as a justification for side.
Toriyama did not write GT. I believe GT was an anime first, right? Like, I don't know if there is a manga, but I thought it was an anime original story.
Sidelining her. She is, in effect, put in her place before the story continues on without her weighing it down. And that is not good.
Huh, really? Most of the characters in Victory Gundam live technically? That's fascinating.
In some ways, Videl's fight against Spopovich cements exactly what I love about her character.
It's so infamous for being so violent.
She's not afraid to get dirty. She's not afraid to take hits. She's stubborn, resilient, resourceful, and refuses to give up. It proves that she's not like her father. She's not worried about her reputation. She doesn't compete in a tournament or fight crime to make herself look good. Those are the same traits that make me love Gohan, a character who likewise stands his ground against implacable foes. The difference is that when Gohan receives his lumps, at least up until now, the story more often allows him to dust himself off and continue on. When Videl takes her lumps, the story holds her back and tells her she's had enough, and doesn't let her fight again for the rest of the series.
Yep.
And in a cruel bit of irony, this is right after they put her in a shirt that literally has the word fight written on it. Her dramatic moment.
This is wild to think about because I hadn't really given it that much thought, but like this really was like the peak of my engagement with Dragon Ball as a kid was the very brief time where Videl was one of the main characters. Like she had struck out to me. I mean, I loved Great Saiyaman. I loved the romantic tension between the two of them over that arc. But like her being in the show made me interested in it in a way I had not been before. And then her getting the shit kicked out of her and then stopping really being in the show, I kind of lost it. Like I saw most of the Buu arc incidentally because they would play it. They'd play Dragon Ball all the time and repeats of it all the time, on a Cartoon Network. So I saw a lot of the Buu arc, and I had read about what happens in magazines and stuff, so I had some sense of what was going on even when I missed parts. But it was very like sporadic that I would see episodes, because I would always kind of be like, oh, what's going on in Dragon Ball? And like later into the Buu arc, again, I liked the Goten and Trunks fusion stuff, and Fat Buu playing with Hercule in a shack somewhere. All that shit was funny, you know, like stuff that I'm sure a lot of people who like the action aspect of the show fucking hated. But you know, I feel like that's the stuff where Toriyama was trying to keep himself entertained while doing like the same arc for the 5th time, you know? So maybe that's what grabbed me about it. Cause I later would finally see original Dragon Ball and be like, oh, well, this is obviously way better, you know, like this is so much more fun. But I never saw nearly as much of it because they would only play it like late night, basically.
Is less of a dramatic moment for her than it is for Gohan. It motivates him to get angry and be protective and swear revenge. There is a term in pop culture for that: women in refrigerators. It is named for an event in a 1994 Green Lantern comic wherein Kyle Rayner discovers his dead girlfriend stuffed in a refrigerator, so it actually barely post-dates this event. But it simply serves as a name for a fairly common event in fiction wherein, disproportionately, a female character is severely wounded or killed not for her own story, but for the purpose of motivating a male hero. And on its face, this situation fits that description to a T. That said, I am surprisingly hesitant to affix that label to this. For one, as I've said, Gohan's so-called motivation here never really goes anywhere, but more importantly, unlike Dragon Ball's tendency to sideline active female characters into baby factories at the slightest provocation, this is not a problem that is exclusive to women. It's not even predominantly directed towards women. This might in fact be the only time it's ever applied to a woman. No, this is Toriyama's frequent problem of not knowing what he wants to do with characters and ultimately discarding them in unsatisfying ways or simply using them as punching bags to build up a threat.
Again, I don't think it's always fair to blame Toriyama. It very well could be that the characters were not testing well, that the manga wasn't selling the way it used to be, and they were told to pump the brakes and change gears.
I wouldn't classify Yamcha as an example of woman in refrigerator, so while this event technically fits the criteria within the realm of fiction, it doesn't exist in a broader contextual framework or trend within its own series. It's bad in how it shuffles Videl to the sidelines, and in turn is bad for how it so callously discards one of its only female combatants, but, as faint praise as it is, I will defend the series against it hurting specifically women to motivate men. Dragon Ball has enough obvious issues with gender politics, so I feel no shame in granting it a mulligan on this one. So, that's the Videl versus Popovich fight. I don't know if I ever imagined I'd have this much to say about one tournament match, but it's obvious that it's bigger than simply the art on the page. I hope I've been able to encapsulate the many functions it serves, ideas it invigorates, and emotions it generates. While it doesn't make me uncomfortable to read, I can totally understand why it evokes that feeling in others. Like so many topics that encourage thought, it's going to generate many different, complex, and opposing reactions, and that's probably for the best. Thanks for watching. This ended up being another long...
Well, that was the best one of those videos that you've shown me so far, Leaf Blady, because I would say I probably felt more uncomfortable than he did in the end. I think that it read it read worse to me than it did to him, you know, but for a lot of the same reasons he pointed out, I just felt more intensely about a lot of it than he seemed to. And I didn't think his comparing it to other stuff in the series did not sell me as much on the idea. Like, if anything, reinforced how bad it was to me. That I was like, well, none of this seems quite as, none of this actually makes me as uncomfortable as this fight does, you know, especially knowing that she never fucking does anything after that point. It's like a real sour note because I loved the character and that's all she does is get her ass beat really violently and then disappear from the story until the next incarnation, you know? So that sucks, actually. But yeah, good video. Okay, I've got a couple things here. Apparently, around noon, when I was doing the first stream, somebody cash apped me $5 and said, "Can you read the prologue for Warbreaker? It's free." I don't know I have the real name of this person, but I don't know what your internet name is or if you're here or whatever. I'll read that after I do the song request that I got in Super Chat, just because I know that person is here. Blink and you'll miss it with $10. Epic the Musical, The Horse and the Infant. Okay. Let's see what this is about. Alrighty. Warbreaker from Brandon Sanderson. I literally have no idea. It's just what the person, all they typed was, let me read it exactly. Can you read the prologue for Warbreaker? It's free. That was sent at 12:09. I'll reply with like a like so they know that I saw it. If I can get my fucking phone screen to operate. I hate this thing. Okay, whatever. I can't use my phone.
All right, my brothers, listen closely.
We about to be on some Hamilton shit? Oh my god, is this Hamilton Troy?
But now we'll be the ones who
Slay Queen.
Think of your wives and your children. Your families wonder where you've been. They're growing old and yet you're still here.
Bird is gonna love
Do what I
this.
say and you'll see them again. Yes, sir. Diomedes will lead the charge. Agamemnon will flank the yards. Menelaus will let our men through the gates to take the whole city at large. Teucer will shoot any ambush attacking. Little Ajax will stay back. Nestor, secure Helena, protect her. Leo, avenge your father, kill the brothers of Hector. Yes, find that inner strength now. Use that well of pride. Fight through every pain now. Ask yourself inside, what do you live for? What do you try for? What do you wish for? What do you fight for? What do you live for? What do you try for? What do you wish for? What do you fight for? Penelope, and Telemachus. I fight for us. I fight for us. Penelope, what do you try for? Telemachus, what do you wish for? I'm on my way. What do you fight for? Attack! Who was that?
A vision of what is to come cannot be outrun, can only be dealt with right here and now.
Tell me how.
I don't think you're ready. A mission to kill someone's son, a foe who won't run, unlike anyone you have faced before.
Say no more. I know that I'm ready.
I don't think you're
Kill that baby. Baby stabber. 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 Stab that baby. You know you want to stab that baby. Come on. You got this. Stay on mission. You can do this. I believe in you. Nah, dog. Nah. Forget about how baby he is. Think about
This
the
is
stabbing.
the son of none other than Troy's very own Prince Hector.
So
Know that
you gotta
grow
stab
from a
him
boy
with
to an
your big
avenger,
sword.
one fumed with rage as you're consumed by age. If you don't end him now, you'll have no one left to save. You can say goodbye to. You can say goodbye to.
Stab that baby right now. If you don't stab that baby, you're a coward.
Love the dogs.
For God's sake, stab that baby.
Please don't make me do this.
You gotta
Don't
do
make me
this.
do
You
this.
gotta do this.
The blood on your hands is something you won't lose. All you can choose is freeze.
Baby two step. Good choice, bad choice. Out of three, you've chosen misery. It's not the first time I've seen, or heard, I should say. It is the first time I've seen a musical adaptation of Troy. But Blind Guardian, they told the whole story in the song, and then there was silence. And I got really excited when it got to the scene with the baby, because I'm like, oh, this is the part in the Blind Guardian song where they're like, the newborn's death would carry ruin to the hall. The newborn's death would be a blessing to us all. Now I know what they were talking about. Because this musical is clearly a lot going to be longer than a mere 14 minutes. Probably 3 fucking hours if it's anything like Hamilton. This was fun. The singing was good. The songwriting was good. The production could be a little better. But it's like a demo basically. I mean, it's an animatic, so I assume there is to be an animation at some point, or at least the hope of one. It's cool though. It's cool as an animatic. Definitely, like, it's cheesy, but no more so than Hamilton is, although it doesn't feel as immediately deep or layered or meaningful. I don't know if there's anything like subversively subtextual about this overall, in the way that, like, in Hamilton they were all black. Like, that was like a big part of it. I don't know if there's something like that going on here, but I'm interested. Oh, no reason not to follow an independent animator, so let's go for it. All right, what was the other thing I have to write? It was wrong app. Warbreaker. Well, I don't know if the person who requested this is around, but hopefully they'll find out that I did this. Because they requested it at like noon, and I just completely missed it. I didn't get a notification. And I don't know who Brandon Sanderson is. But I guess I'm about to find out. How long is this? Okay. Seems right. All right, let's go for it. It's funny, Vasher thought, how many things begin with my getting thrown into prison. The guards laughed to one another, slamming the cell door shut with a clang. Vasher stood and dusted himself off, rolling his shoulder and wincing. While the bottom half of his cell door was solid wood, the top half was barred, and he could see the 3 guards open his large duffel and rifle through his possessions. One of them noticed him watching. The guard was an oversized beast of a man with a shaved head and a dirty uniform that barely retained the bright yellow and blue coloring of the Telier City Guard. Bright colors, Vasher thought. I'll have to get used to those again. In any other nation, the vibrant blues and yellows would have been ridiculous on soldiers. This, however, was Hallandren, land of returned gods, lifeless servants, biochromatic research, and, of course, color. The large guard sauntered up to the cell door, leaving his friends to amuse themselves with Vasher's belongings. They say you're pretty tough, the man said, sizing up Vasher. Vasher did not respond. The bartender says you beat down some 20 men in the brawl. The guard rubbed his chin. You don't look that tough to me. Either way, you should have known better than to strike a priest. The others, they'll spend a night locked up. You, though, you'll hang, colorless fool. All right, this is mostly goofy so far. I would say this feels very... It feels generic in the sense that it's so, like, to the point. Like, there's not, like, a sense of poeticism to it. And it makes it feel like I'm reading like a description of a show. Like I'm reading someone describing what happens in something as opposed to like telling me a story, if that makes sense. Anyway, Vasher turned away. His cell was functional if unoriginal. Actually, that is the perfect description of what I'm talking about. This story is functional if unoriginal. A thin slit at the top of one wall let in light. The stone walls dripped with water. What a fucking way to describe a setting. Unoriginal? You're calling the setting of your own work unoriginal? Like, the more I think about that, like, what a fucking thing to say. His jail cell was unoriginal. Like, imagine generic. Just picture generic, you know? Like, the fuck do you mean by that? Functional if unoriginal. What jail cell is original? Like, that's a terrible, terrible, terrible sentence. I was trying not to get stuck on like the writing quality, but that really fucking threw me for a loop. A thin slit at the top of one wall let in light. The stone walls dripped with water and moss, and a pile of dirty straw decomposed in the corner. You ignoring me? The guard asked, stepping closer to the door. The colors of his uniform brightened, as if he'd stepped into a stronger light. As if he had, or did he? Did he step into a stronger light or not? The change was slight. Vasher didn't have much breath remaining. I guess breath with a capital B must mean something. And so his aura didn't do much to the colors around him. The guards didn't notice the change in color. Okay, so his aura is doing it. The guards didn't notice the change in color, just as he hadn't noticed back in the bar, when he and his buddies had picked Vasher up off the floor and thrown him in their cart. Of course, the change was so slight to the unaided eye that it would have been nearly impossible to pick out. I hate the way that paragraph is written. Here now, said one of the men, looking through Vasher's duffel. What's this? Vasher had always... Oh, I guess that was meant to be read as here now. Here now. Here now. It sounds like he's giving a command. Here now. Whatever. What's this? Vasher had always found it interesting that the men who watched dungeons tended to be as bad as, or worse than, the men they guarded. Perhaps that was deliberate. Society didn't seem to care if such men were outside the cells or in them, so long as they were kept away from more honest men. Sure. Yes. That is... Just... This guy, like, I've been to jail. Like, this... I know how it's like. Assuming that such a thing existed. From Vasher's bag, a guard pulled free a long object wrapped in white linen. The man whistled as he unwrapped the cloth, revealed a long, thin-bladed sword in a silver sheath. The hilt was pure black. Who do you suppose he stole this from? The lead guard eyed Vasher. Like, when you say the hilt was pure black, like, if you described that there was something about the hilt, like, and then said that all, like, because you say pure black, but I don't have any vision of what it's shaped like. So it's like, well, okay, do you mean that like there's like a pure black handle or like the whole? I assume you mean all parts of it, but how many parts are there? What are all the components? If you just said it was black, I wouldn't have thought like this, but pure black is like, okay, well, maybe he means the black is like the quality of the black is that it is pure, like it's not a faded black. Why pure black? Why pure black? Why not just it was the hilt? It had a black hilt. Why do we even need to know? The fucking silver sheath black hilt? Who fucking gives a shit? That sounds ugly. It doesn't sound like a cool sword. Who do you suppose he stole this from? The lead guard eyed Vasher, likely wondering if Vasher was some kind of nobleman. Though Hallandren had no aristocracy, many neighboring kingdoms had their lords and ladies. Yet what lord would wear a drab brown cloak ripped in several places? Okay, you're jumping into what the character is literally thinking. I hate that style of writing. Like, this is not from a first-person perspective, so switching like this is annoying. What lord would sport bruises from a bar fight, a half-grown beard, and boots worn from years of walking? The guard turned away, apparently convinced that Vasher was no lord. He was right, and he was wrong. Let me see that, the lead guard said, taking the sword. He grunted, obviously surprised by its weight. He turned it about, noting the clasp that tied sheath to hilt, keeping the blade from being drawn. He undid the clasp. The colors in the room deepened. They didn't grow brighter, not the way the guard's vest had when he approached Vasher. Yeah, I assumed that's what you meant. Instead, they grew stronger, darker. Reds became maroon. Yellows hardened to gold. Blues approached navy. What the fuck? So they desaturated. What do you mean by stronger? More intense? Strong colors don't get stronger. Be careful, friend, Vasher said softly. That sword can be dangerous. It's maybe he's trying to describe like when you're editing a picture and you take the color slider and you pump it all the way up. Trump just survived an assassination attempt? What? For real? I will keep reading this, but God damn it, Twitter. Give me news, you son of a bitch. Why is Richard Simmons trending above Donald Trump if he just got... Holy shit.
And if you want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
Well, he sure fucking took a few before he dropped. Did anybody get shot? It sounded like it could have been pretty distant. Was he shot? Holy shit, he actually got shot? Holy fucking shit. Holy shit. Holy fuck. That's crazy. That's insane. Wow. Wow. Big fucking news. Looks extremely fake. I agree that it looks extremely fake. But holy fuck. Fake or not fake, it's going to be all anybody talks about for the rest of time. I mean, you kind of hope it's fake, right? Like, you don't want to think that somebody just randomly shot at the former president in the middle of a rally. Or maybe you do. I don't know. Trump just officially won the election, I think. I mean, that seems likely. That's also what makes it seem so fake is like, well, I mean, what would possibly be a better running story than like, oh yeah, they're literally trying to assassinate me, you know, like, well, and it gives him an excuse to not be in public for the rest of this, right? Like, could do the rest. He had to be sitting there like, what would be a good way to make it so I don't have to do all this fucking campaign traveling? What if we pretended I got shot? Then I could just fucking sit in my office for the next 6 months and win the presidency, you know? I could see it. That's my present take. That's my instantaneous 1 minute seeing it take. Looks fake. Good reasons for it to be fake. Good reasons for it to be real. I don't know. We'll see when they catch somebody. If somebody's going to take the blame for this, so somebody might have a manifesto or get, put in prison. Is the shooter going to have blown his brains out 15 yards away? Because that would obviously lead into the conspiracy if the person just kills themselves right after attempting to shoot Trump. If that person doesn't kill themselves, I can't even imagine what's going to happen to them if there is a person they can catch and say, this person shot at Trump. Wow, what a crazy fucking event to have transpired while I'm in the middle of reading this fucking boring generic fantasy story. let's finish it real quick. Let's finish this prologue. Jesus Christ, the president's getting shot at. This is wild. I guess that'll be a reaction clip, right? Me finding out the president just got shot live.
So we gotta move to the bus.
Not the president, the former. Well, I mean, they still call you the president, even if you're not the current president. He seems pretty happy about it. Let's not be. Holy fucking shit! He's really bleeding all over his face. Unfucking believable. Yeah, this is gonna be wild. Donald Trump, the first black president. Oh no. Oh no, people are already wigging out. This is wild. This is crazy shit. I mean, this is the same energy as Riley's mugshot, or getting pulled into the. I'm reminded of this. You know, this is the same energy to me. Madness. Almost certainly staged, right? How could he get grazed but not hit by a bullet in such a way as to give him an anime scar? I protected Trump with the power of the Sonichu amulet. I bet you fucking did, Dick, you son of a bitch. What a fucking face. All right. Okay, whatever. Oh. Well, it should have been a better shot and got no. What's the Kendrick line about? I didn't aim high enough this time. I'll show you I learned from my mistakes. No, I don't want anybody to die. I'm pro-life, you know, and by that I don't mean anti-abortion. Sometimes abortion is the road to a better life. Anyway, the colors are getting strong. Let's be careful, friend, Vasher said softly. That sword can be dangerous. The guard looked up. All was still. All, like the world, you know, everything was still. All three things that are in this, three objects that exist in this scene are still. Then the guard snorted and walked away from Vasher's cell, still carrying the sword. The other two followed, bearing Vasher's duffel, entering the guard room at the end of the hallway. The door thumped shut. Vasher immediately knelt beside the patch of straw, selecting a handful of sturdy lengths. He pulled threads from his cloak. It was beginning to fray at the bottom, and tied the straw into the shape of a small person, perhaps 3 inches high, with bushy arms and legs. He plucked a hair from one of his eyebrows, set it against the straw figure's head, then reached into his boot and pulled out a brilliant red scarf. Why does it have to be brilliant red? There's just so many cliches. Almost feels like AI writing. Then Vasher breathed. Oh, did he? Oh, right. It's breathing is a thing. It's capital B breathing. It flowed out of him, puffing into the air, translucent yet radiant, like the color of oil on water in the sun. Vasher felt it leave. Biochromatic breath, scholars called it. Most people just called it breath. Each person had one, or at least that was how it usually went. One person, one breath. Okay, so he's leaving himself open to not have to never give. Oh, Vasher has 50 breaths. Great. So everyone else has one. This guy is fucking 50. A real Kirito walking around here. Vasher had around 50 breaths, just enough to reach the first heightening. Oh, great. The first heightening. I'm so glad I could reach that. There's going to be a second heightening. The power level scaling is already like writing itself out in my mind of where this is going. Having so few made him feel poor compared with what he'd once held, but many would consider 50 breaths to be a great treasure. Unfortunately, even awakening a small figure made from organic material, using a piece of his own body as a focus, drained away some half of his breaths. Oh, okay, so now he's down to 25 breaths? The little straw figure jerked, sucking in the breath. in Vasher. So most people have 1. He's got 50, but he had to spend half of them just to do this thing. This is a fucking weird system. The little straw figure jerked, sucking in the breath. In Vasher's hand, half of the brilliant red scarf faded to gray. Had to throw in that brilliant again. Vasher leaned down, imagining it's like it's the title of the scarf. Like if you had it as an item in your inventory in a video game, it would be called Brilliant Red Scarf. Vasher leaned down, imagining what he wanted the figure to do, and completed the final step of the process as he gave the command. Fetch keys, he said. The straw figure stood and raised its single eyebrow toward Vasher. Vasher pointed. Why does it have an eyebrow? Vasher pointed toward the guard room. From it, he heard sudden shouts of surprise. Not much time, he thought. The straw person ran along the floor, then jumped up, vaulting between the bars. Vasher pulled off. I'm just like imagining the little gingerbread man from Shrek. The Fane just said Trixie, all caps, out of nowhere. What's up, the Fane? What's going on? Why the all caps Trixie? It's like you've alerted me, but you have given me no context. The straw person ran along the floor, then jumped up, vaulting between the bars. Vasher pulled off his cloak and set it on the floor. It was the perfect shape of a person, marked with rips that matched the scars on Vasher's body, its hood cut with holes to match Vasher's eyes. The closer an object was to human shape and form, the fewer breaths it took to awaken. Sounds like the opening cutscene for one of those early 2010s fantasy games where it's just like, here's so many mages doing ominous shit. Anyways, you woke up in a field with a sword. I don't know if I've played any games like that. Okay. Vasher leaned down, trying not to think of the days when he'd had enough breaths to awaken without regard for shape or focus. That had been a different time. Wincing, he pulled a tuft of hair from his head, then sprinkled it across the hood of the cloak. Once again, he breathed. Just that had been a different time. Like, really, the moments before... Fane, we did a reaction to the Donald Trump assassination attempt that just happened. You'll have to scroll back like 5 minutes. I reacted. I can't react anymore without more information, though. You can go ahead and safely do that. This is a boring story I'm reading, and I'm mostly just kind of making fun of it. So, that's probably more interesting. Yeah, like that had been a different time. Like, no shit. The time that happened before now was not now. Fucking, that was such an unnecessary sentence. It took the rest of his breath. With it gone, the cloak trembling, the scarf losing the rest of its color, Vasher felt dimmer. Losing one's breaths was not fatal. Indeed, the extra breaths Vasher used had once belonged to other people. Vasher didn't know who they were. He hadn't gathered these breaths himself. They had been given to him. But, of course, that was the way it was always supposed to work. One could not take breath by force. Okay. This is such a random time to dump all these fucking mechanics. Like, all that has happened so far, blink and you'll miss it. We scroll back 10 minutes. Scroll back 10 minutes. Trixie, did you hear the Trump? The news got hit in the ear. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, this scene has been, this guy has sat in a jail cell, talked to some guards, and like spawned a little guy. And in the process of that, we've had like 10 different exposition dumps about how magic works and who the fuck this guy is. Being void of breath did change him. Colors didn't seem as bright. He couldn't feel the bustling people moving about in the city above, a connection he normally took for granted. It was the awareness all men had for others, that thing which whispered a warning, and the drowsiness of sleep when someone entered the room. In Vasher, that sense had been magnified 50 times. And now it was gone. So instinct. And now it was gone, sucked into the cloak and the straw person, giving them power. Like, he just described instinct as like an abstract concept, more abstract than instinct already is, like, as a concept. The cloak jerked. Vasher leaned down. Protect me, he commanded, and the cloak grew still. Grew still? Did it continue growing, or it became still? He stood, throwing it back on. The straw figure returned to his window. It carried a large ring of keys. The figure's straw feet were stained red. The crimson blood seemed so dull to Vasher now, so it murdered the guards. He took the keys. Thank you, he said. He always thanked them. He didn't know why, particularly considering what he did next. Your breath to mine, he commanded, touching the straw person's chest. The straw person immediately fell backward off the door, life draining from it, and Vasher got his breath back. Well, that's nice. The familiar sense of awareness returned, the knowledge of connection, a connectedness of fitting. He could only take the breath back because he'd awakened this creature himself. Indeed, awakenings of this sort were rarely permanent. He used his breath like a reserve, doling it out, then recovering it. Compared with what he had once held, 25 breaths was a laughably small number. However, compared with nothing, it seemed infinite. He shivered in satisfaction. I mean, most people only get fucking one, so yeah, it should feel like a lot. The yells from the guard room died out. The dungeon fell still. He had to keep moving. Vasher reached through the bars, using the keys to unlock his cell. He pushed the thick door open, rushing out into the hallway, leaving the straw figure discarded on the ground. We knew that. We knew he wasn't going to fucking take it with him. He didn't walk to the guard room, or we wouldn't have assumed that unless he did take it with him. He didn't walk to the guard room and the exit beyond it, but instead turned south, penetrating deeper into the dungeon. This was the most uncertain part of his plan. Finding a tavern that was frequented by priests of the iridescent tones had been easy enough. Getting into a bar fight, then striking one of those same priests, had been equally simple. Hallandren took their religious figures very seriously, and Vasher had earned himself not the usual imprisonment in a local jail, but a trip to the God's King's dungeons. Knowing the kind of men who tended to guard such dungeons, yeah, we know about we know his opinion on guards. He'd had a pretty good idea that they would try to draw Nightblood. That had given him the diversion he needed to get the keys. So we needed to know that he already knew the guards were going to draw his sword. This was all part of his master plan. Fucking okay, he's just so brilliant. Who gives a fuck? But now came the unpredictable part. Vasher stopped, awakened cloak rustling. It was easy to locate the cell he wanted, for around it a large patch of stone had been drained of color, leaving both walls and doors a dull gray. It was a place to imprison an awakener, for no colors meant no awakening. Vasher stepped up to the door, looking through the bars. A man hung by his arms from the ceiling, naked and chained. His color was vibrant to Vasher's eyes, his skin a pure tan, his bruises brilliant splashes of blue and violet. The man was gagged, another precaution. In order to awaken, the man would need 3 things: breath, color, and a command. The harmonics and the hues, some called it, the iridescent tones, the relationship between color and sound. A command had to be spoken clearly and firmly in the awakener's native language. Any stuttering, any mispronunciation would invalidate the awakening. The breath would be drawn out, but the object would be unable to act. Jesus Christ, I don't care. Vasher used the prison keys to unlock the cell door, then stepped inside. This man's aura made colors grow brighter by sharp measure when they got close to him. Anyone would be able to notice an aura that strong, though it was much easier for someone who had well, apparently not everyone, because the fucking guards didn't notice. It wasn't the strongest biochromatic aura Vasher had ever seen. Those belonged to the Returned, known as gods here in Hallandren. Still, the prisoner's biochroma was very impressive and much, much stronger than Vasher's own. The prisoner held a lot of breaths. Oh, he meant this guy's aura. Okay. Still, though, not anyone would notice if their color changed when they got close to you, because the prisoners did not notice. The prisoner held a lot of breaths, hundreds upon hundreds of them. The man swung in his bonds, studying Vasher, gagged lips bleeding from a lack of water. Vasher hesitated only briefly, then reached up and pulled the gag free. You, the prisoner whispered, coughing slightly. Are you here to free me? No, Var, Vasher said quietly. I'm here to kill you. Var snorted. Captivity hadn't been easy on him. When Vasher had last seen Var, he'd been plump. Okay, so he knows this guy. Why would you bury that? That's the lead. He knows the guy. Don't bury the lead. You just made it sound like some random dude, and now you're like, oh no, actually it's his friend, though. Judging by his emaciated body, he'd been without food for some time now. The cuts, bruises, and burn marks on his flesh were fresh. Both the torture and the haunted look in Var's bag-rimmed eyes bespoke a solemn truth. Breath could only be transferred by willing, intentional command. That command could, however, be encouraged. So, Var croaked, you judge me just like everyone else. Your failed rebellion is not my concern. I just want your breath. You and the entire Hallandren court. Yes, but you're not going to give it to one of the returned. You're going to give it to me in exchange for killing you. Doesn't seem like much of a trade. There was a hardness, a void of emotion in Var that Vasher had not seen the last time they had parted years before. Odd, Vasher thought, that I should finally, after all of this time, find something in the man I can identify with. Oh, God, what a fucking edgelord. I carry hollow tips because it reflects what's in my soul. Damn! Vasher kept a wary distance from Var. Now that the man's voice was free, he could command. However, he was touching nothing except for the metal chains, and metal was very difficult to awaken. It had never been alive, and it was far from the form of a man. Even during the height of his power, Vasher himself had only managed to awaken metal on a few select occasions. Of course, some extremely powerful awakeners could bring objects to life that they weren't touching, but that were in the sound of their voice. That, however, required the 9th heightening. Even Var didn't have that much breath. In fact, Vasher knew of only one living person who did, the God King himself. That meant Vasher was probably safe. Var contained a great wealth of breath, but had nothing to awaken. Vasher walked around the chained man, finding it very difficult to offer any sympathy. Var had earned his fate, yet the priests would not let him die while he held so much breath. If he died, it would be wasted, gone, irretrievable. Yeah, we didn't need 3 fucking words for the same thing. I get it. Not even the government of Hallandren, which had such strict laws about the buying and passing of breath, could let such a treasure slip away. They wanted it badly enough to forestall the execution of even a high-profile criminal like Var. In retrospect, they would curse themselves for not leaving him better guarded. In retrospect, from when? What the? We're not in retrospect yet. God damn it. Oh, no. Nobody edited that? Okay, goddamn. Where was I? I lost my place. I got so offended by that. Okay, but then Vasher had been waiting 2 years for an opportunity like this one. Well, Var asked. Give me the breath, Var, Vasher said, stepping forward. Amazing salesmanship. Var snorted. I doubt you have the skill of the God King's torturers, Vasher, and I've withstood them for 2 weeks now. You'd be surprised, but that doesn't matter. You are going to give me your breath. You know you only have 2 choices. Give it to me or give it to them. Var hung by his wrists, rotating slowly, silent. Why is he rotating? You don't have much time to consider, Vasher. Was he rotating the whole time, or is he just now rotating? You don't have much time to consider, Vasher said. Any moment now, someone is going to discover the dead guards outside. The alarm will be raised. I'll leave you. You will be tortured again, and you will eventually break. Then all the power you've gathered will go to the very people you vowed to destroy. Var stared at the floor. Vasher let him hang for a few moments and could see that the reality of the situation was clear to him. Finally, Var looked up at Vasher. That thing you bear, it's here in the city? Vasher nodded. The screams I heard earlier, it caused them? Vasher nodded again. How long will you be in Teller? For a time, a year perhaps. So that's how long the first book of this is supposed to last, I guess. Will you use it against them? My goals are my own to know, Var. Will you take my deal or not? Quick death in exchange for those breaths? I promise you this, your enemies will not have them. Var grew quiet. It's yours, he finally whispered. What a pussy. Vasher reached over, resting his hand on Var's forehead, careful not to let any part of his clothing touch the man's skin, lest Var drew forth color for awakening. Var didn't move. He looked numb. Then, just as Vasher began to worry that the prisoner had changed his mind, Var breathed. The color drained from him. The beautiful iridescence, the aura that had made him look majestic despite his wounds and chains. It flowed from his mouth, hanging in. You never said that he looked majestic despite his wounds and chains. You said he had a lot of aura. You didn't say all that shit. It flowed from his mouth, hanging in the air, shimmering like mist. Vasher drew it in, closing his eyes. My life to yours, Var commanded, a hint of despair in his voice. My breath become yours. The breath flooded into Vasher, and everything became vibrant. His brown cloak now seemed deep and rich in color. The blood on the floor was intensely red, as if aflame. Even Var's skin seemed a masterpiece of color, the surface marked by deep black hairs, blue bruises, and sharp red cuts. It had been years since Vasher had felt such life. It's a shame that a story that is so much about like colors is so like lame at describing colors. He gasped, falling to his knees as it overwhelmed him, and he had to drop a hand to the stone floor to keep himself from toppling over. How did I live without this? He knew that his senses hadn't actually improved, yet he felt so much more alert, more aware of the beauty of sensation. It's like doing some fucking coke. When he touched the stone floor, he marveled at its roughness and the sound of wind passing through the thin dungeon window above. Had it always been that melodic? How could he not have noticed? Keep your part of the bargain, Var said. Vasher noted the tones in his voice, the beauty of each one, how close they were to harmonics. Vasher had gained perfect pitch. Oh, amazing. Like he needed that. A gift for anyone who reached the second heightening. Oh my god, we already got to second heightening. That was real quick. It would be good to have that again. Vasher could, of course, have up to the fifth heightening at any time if he wished. What? Why? That would require certain sacrifices he wasn't willing to make. Okay, as I thought, this is all a metaphor for like this guy's money, right? Like this is a metaphor for having had a lot of money, spent all your money, trying to build your money back. And of course, you could just have a lot of money anytime if you just did the things that you knew were going to make you money, but you don't really want to do that. So you're working your way up the backwards way. This is me trying to relate to the story, trying to find some kind of meaning in it that I could project onto. And so he forced himself to do it the old-fashioned way by gathering breaths from people like Var. Yes, like me stealing subs from shittier YouTubers, hopefully. Vasher stood, then pulled out the colorless scarf he had used earlier. He tossed it over Var's shoulder, then breathed. He didn't bother making the scarf have human shape. He didn't need to use a bit of his hair or skin for a focus, though he did have to draw the color from his shirt. Vasher met Var's resigned eyes. Strange things, Vasher commanded, fingers touching the quivering scarf. Quivering scarf? Sounds like he's fucking fingering his pussy. It twisted immediately, pulling away a large, yet now inconsequential, amount of breath. The scarf quickly wrapped around Var's neck, tightening, choking him. Var didn't struggle or gasp. Wow, he choked him? That's the quick death he promised? He simply watched Vasher with hatred until his eyes bulged and he died. That's a slow death. That is not a quick death. That's a shitty, slow, painful death. Hatred. Vasher had known enough of that in his time. He quietly reached up and recovered his breath from the scarf, then left Var dangling in his cell. Vasher passed quietly through the prison, marveling at the color of the woods and the stones. After a few moments of walking, he noticed a new color in the hallway. Red. Oh, really? New? There's been nothing but red for this fucking story. He stepped around the pool of blood, which was seeping down the inclined dungeon floor, and moved into the guard room. The 3 guards lay dead. No shit. We knew that from back when the fucking thing came back with blood on its feet. One of them sat in a chair. Night blood, still mostly sheathed, had been rammed through the man's chest. About an inch of a dark black blade was visible beneath the silver sheath. Vasher carefully slid the weapon fully back into its sheath. He did up the clasp, so it was in his chest in the sheath? He did up the clasp. I did very well today, a voice said in his mind. Vasher didn't respond to the sword. I killed them all, Nightblood continued. Aren't you proud of me? Vasher picked up the weapon, accustomed to its unusual weight, and carried it in one hand. He recovered his duffel and slung it over his shoulder. I knew you'd be impressed, Nightblood said, sounding satisfied. Yeah, this sucks. Very generic. What was the phrasing it had in there? Functional if unoriginal. That's the perfect description of this. I would give it a strong 3 to a light 4. I did very well today. I bet the author thought that after writing this. You know what, Ellen? I think you are entirely right. And I bet he wrote that in one sitting. Not that's an insult. I do the same thing. I'm just saying. He sat down, he wrote that, and he went, job well done. Trixie, read my messages about Sanderson. Points gone. Okay, let me go up. All right, Sanderson was the writer of this. So Amy has written about who he is. Wait, where does this start? Okay, I'm going to promise to make you read a good prologue for an epic fantasy book one of these days, and no, I don't mean mine. Sanderson always does it. He starts with too much specific magic stuff. I don't think she's ever going to get through Malazan. I was thinking Tigana. Also, wait, was this where it started? You talking about this guy? Okay, no, it's further back. Okay, Brian Sanderson is Brandon Sanderson is the biggest name in epic fantasy currently and has been so for a long time. I don't consider him the greatest or even close, but that he's very popular. He was the guy they called in to finish The Wheel of Time. Oof. Brandon's work seriously lacks literary merit and engaging prose. His prose is better nowadays than it used to be in Mistborn, which I dropped halfway through the first novel. To be fair, Sanderson has admitted on several occasions that prose is the weakest part of his art. Yes, the magic in Warbreaker is based in color. This is a recurring thing in Sanderson's books. The way he described magical elements are very confusing in the beginning. The prologue to Way of Kings is interesting plot-wise, but super messy. Sanderson's popularity is also part of why invisible prose is so talked about. I don't blame him but the audience for copying so much. I actually listen to Sanderson's podcast every now and then. Sanderson isn't known to be particularly tight with his writing. Yeah. I'm going to promise. All right, I read this part. Sanderson's prologues only make sense later into the books, and no, I don't think he's particularly good at doing this. The thing about Sanderson is that, again, I don't think he is bad. I just don't believe the editing of his novels is taken that seriously because he sells so much. Yeah, that's probably the case. That being said, this prologue reminds me of the worst parts of Mistborn. The other stuff from him I've read isn't this lacking. Ellen, now you understand my hate of invisible prose. Sanderson has been one of the best sellers for like 2 decades by now. God, I need to get into this genre. This is the highest selling fantasy author, or maybe I'm too. God, I think I am at least like. I don't think I'm too much better of a writer than this guy to be successful, and I don't think I'm any worse. So it gives me a lot of hope. Maybe I could have a writing career if this is what the best selling fucking fantasy author writes like. Because I confidently enjoyed my own Sunops chapter 1 more than I enjoyed reading that by like a long shot. Oh, I hope the person who wrote it is not in chat. No, this was a famous author. I don't know if the person who requested it was in chat though. Because both stories are about Aura, I gotta ask: does this story or the Lucario fanfic have better writing, like quality of writing? Oh man, the Lucario fanfic, the Lucario fanfic had worse writing but more interesting. Like, because it was very emotional and it felt like it helped me to get into the headspace of the character. I didn't necessarily like being in the headspace of the Lucario character in that fanfic, or the main character who was like in love with Lucario. The writing in the Lucario thing was very confusing. Like, it had a lot of moments where it was like, what the fuck is happening here? But it was more interesting because at least there was like an obvious weirdness to it. Like, this is like about a bizarre fetish, the fantasy story was just like, I came up with a whole magic system, guys. I'm going to explain it to you in this incredibly boring, generic scene of a guy escaping jail, like in the start of a fucking well, I guess Elden Ring also applies. I meant Elder Scrolls. Thank you, my brain. Remember how in Sunops it first establishes all the characters and setting, gives you a reason to care about them, get some action in, and then introduces a magic system. Exactly, Ellen. Exactly. And I don't even overburden you with explanations about the magic system. You learn how to do 2 techniques. He learns how to, or really 1. He just learns how to like cool himself off with air and why it works. That's it. That's all that's in the first chapter. And even that took like an amount of like a paragraph of technical detailing to make it happen, Sanders is having as many magic systems as possible. He's always introducing new ones in every book. He'll never be able to compete with Kusomega. I'll introduce so many magic systems. So far, we've got the 16 magics that are run by the gods, the upper level gods, which have space, time, and causality magic, and then the autism magic that allows you to travel dimensions and move things between dimensions. I'm sure I can come up with a whole another 5 magic systems by the end of volume 3 of Kusomega. Maybe that's how I'll manage to get through it. Or just better define each of the 16, maybe each of the 16 types of magic will also have like subcategories within them of magic or something, sub functions. Well, they kind of do, actually. Volume 3 does establish some of that. I just haven't really figured out most of them. People were talking about what the season finale for the 2024 election would be, but I think it just happened early. They always split seasons in half now. That's a funny response. Oh my god. I have only seen the first episode of Ascendance of a Bookworm. So not really. I've heard good things about it. I think I'm all caught up on all the paid suggestions. Oh wait, here we go. We've got $9 from Vincent Perez. Or oh shit, I hope that wasn't somebody's name I'm not supposed to read. I hate that it gives me real names. Everybody, if you send me something, tell me who you are in the thing. If it's not your internet handle, tell me who you are in the text of this, so I don't end up reading your real names to the internet. Sorry for whoever just got doxxed. Don't tell them it's you now. Nobody admit that was you. Nobody needs to know who that was. Nobody needs to figure out who asked for this. Pretend it didn't happen. Okay. Parahumans. Wait a minute. I've read this before. I read this for a rant once, I'm pretty sure. Okay, God, that was a lot to type. Yeah, I'm pretty sure someone asked me to rant about this, and I read the first chapter once. I don't remember liking it very much, but you know what? We'll give it another shot. We'll see how we feel. Everybody say not me, and the last person is left is going to be them. Is it so bad to reveal your real name online? No, but I also don't want to do it if somebody doesn't want it revealed. You know, I don't want to do it by accident. Somebody might not have wanted it. Anyway, it's worm time. Brief notes from the author. This story isn't intended for younger sensitive readers. Readers who are on the lookout for trigger warnings are advised to give Worm a pass. Class ended in 5 minutes, and all I could think was, an hour is too long for lunch. Since the start of the semester, I couldn't imagine thinking something like that. Since the start of the semester, I had been looking forward to the part of Mr. Gladley's world issues class where we'd start discussing capes. Now that it had finally arrived, I couldn't focus. I fidgeted, my pen moving from hand to hand, tapping or absently drawing some figure in the corner of the page to join the other doodles. My eyes were restless too, darting from the clock above the door to Mr. Gladley and back to the clock. I wasn't picking up enough of his lesson to follow along. 20 minutes to 12, 5 minutes left before class ended. He was animated, clearly excited about what he was talking about, and for once the class was listening. He was the sort of teacher who tried to be friends with his students, the sort who went by Mr. G instead of Mr. Gladley. He liked to end class a little earlier than usual and chat with the popular kids, gave lots of group work so others could hang out with their friends in class, and had fun assignments like mock trials. There's a lot of detail about this guy. I hope he matters. He struck me as one of the popular kids who had become a teacher. He probably thought he was everyone's favorite. I wondered how he'd react if he heard my opinion on the subject. Would it shatter his self-image, or would he shrug it off as an anomaly from the gloomy girl that never spoke in class? Probably he would just be like, yeah, you're whatever you have to say, I already thought about it. I glanced over my shoulder. Madison Clements, who sat 2 rows to my left and 2 seats back. She saw me looking and smirked, her eyes narrowing, and I lowered my eyes to my notebook. I tried to ignore the ugly, sour feeling that stewed in my stomach. I glanced up at the clock, 11:43. Let me wrap up here, Mr. Gladley said. Sorry, guys, but there is homework for the weekend. Think about capes and how they've impacted the world around you. Make a list if you want, but it's not mandatory. On Monday, we'll break up into groups of 4 and see what the what group has the best list. I'll buy the winning group treats from the vending machine. Ugh, God, school is disgusting. What a fucked place. What a bad place. Thinking about school is fills me with the whatever that character is feeling in the pit of their stomach. Just the mere thought of school in general fills me with that feeling. There were a series of cheers, followed by the classroom devolving into noisy chaos. The room was filled with sounds of binders snapping shut, textbooks and notebooks being slammed closed, chairs screeching on cheap tile, and the dull roar of emerging conversation. A bunch of the more social members of the class gathered around Mr. Gladly to chat. Me, I just put my books away and kept quiet. I hate when writers do that. Like me, that's a film thing. Like it's me, and then like it shows you on screen. That's the joke there. It's like for narration. Doing that it just makes you feel like you learned how to write from watching TV, which feels like that for a lot of writers, but I don't like it. Oops, I didn't mean to hit the space bar like I was unpausing a video when it's actually me, in fact, reading. I'd written down almost nothing in the way of notes. There were collections of doodles spreading across the page and numbers in the margin where I'd counted down the minutes to lunch as if I was keeping track of the timer on a bomb. Madison, maybe she meant an hour is too long before lunch? Like an hour? No, class ended in 5 minutes. Okay, I'm confused. Why was she thinking an hour is too long for lunch when she wants to go to lunch so badly? Whatever. Madison was talking with her friends. She was popular but not gorgeous in the way the stereotypical popular girls on TV were. She was adorable instead, petite. She played up the image with sky blue pins on her shoulder-length brown hair and a cutesy attitude. Madison wore a strapless top and denim skirt, which seemed absolutely moronic to me, given the fact that it was still early enough in the spring that we could see our breath in the mornings. Hey, some bitches just like to be cold. I wasn't exactly in a position to criticize her. Boys liked her and she had friends, while the same was hardly true for me. The only feminine feature I had going for me was my dark curly hair, which I'd grown long. The clothes I wore didn't show skin, and I didn't deck myself out in bright colors like a bird showing off its plumage. You mean you didn't peacock? Guys liked her, I think, because she was appealing without being intimidating. If only they knew. If they only knew, I should say. The bell rang with a lilting ding-dong, and I was the first. Lilting is such a way to, ding, 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 ding. And I was the first one out the door. I didn't run, but I moved at a decent clip as I headed up the stairwell to the third floor and made my way to the girls' washroom. There were a half-dozen girls there already, which meant I had to wait for a stall to open up. I nervously watched the door of the bathroom, feeling my heart drop every time someone entered the room. As soon as there was a free stall, I let myself in and locked the door. I rushed in, is what she should have said. I leaned against the wall and exhaled slowly. It wasn't quite a sigh of relief. Relief implies you feel better. I wouldn't feel better until I got home. No, I just felt less uneasy. It took maybe 5 minutes before the noise of others in the washroom stopped. A peek below the partitions showed that there was nobody else in the other stalls. I sat on the lid of the toilet and got my brown bag lunch to begin eating. Lunch on the toilet was routine now. Every school day I would finish off my brown bag lunch, then I'd do homework or read a book until lunch hour was over. The only book in my bag that I hadn't already read was called Triumvirate, a biography of the leading 3 members of the Protectorate. I was thinking I would spend as long as I could on Mr. Gladly's assignment before reading because I wasn't enjoying the book. Biographies weren't my thing, and they were especially not my thing when I was suspicious it was all made up. Whatever my plan, I didn't even have a chance to finish my pita wrap. The door of the bathroom banged open. I froze. I didn't want to rustle the bag and clue anyone into what I was doing, so I kept still and listened. I couldn't make out the voices. The noise of the conversation was obscured by giggling and the sound of water from the sinks. There was a knock on the door, making me jump. I ignored it, but the person on the other side just repeated the knock. "Occupied," I called out hesitantly. "Oh my God, it's Taylor," one of the girls on the other side exclaimed with joy. Then in response to something another girl whispered, I barely heard her add, "Yeah, do it." I stood up abruptly, letting the brown bag with the last mouthful of my lunch fall to the tiled floor. Rushing for the door, I popped the lock and pushed. The door didn't budge. There were noises from the stalls on the either side of me, then a sound above me. I looked up to see what it was, only to get splashed in the face. My eyes started burning, and I was momentarily blinded by the stinging fluid in my eyes and my blurring of my glasses. I could taste it as it ran down my nose and mouth. Cranberry juice. They didn't stop there. I managed to pull my glasses off just in time to see Madison and Sophia leaning over the top of the stall, each of them with plastic bottles at the ready. I bent over with my hands shielding my head just before they emptied the contents over me. It ran down the back of my neck, soaked my clothes, fizzed as it ran through my hair. I pushed against the door again, but the girl on the other side was braced against it with her body. If the girls pouring juice and soda on me were Madison and Sophia, that meant the girl on the other side of the door was Emma, leader of the trio. Feeling a flare of anger at the realization, I shoved on the door, the full weight of my body slamming against it. I didn't accomplish anything, and my shoes lost traction on the juice-slick floor. I fell to my knees in the puddling juice. Empty plastic bottles with labels for grape and cranberry juice fell to the ground around me. A bottle of orange soda bounced off my shoulder to splash into the puddle before rolling under the partition and into the next stall. The smell of the fruity drinks and sodas was sickly sweet. The door swung open, and I glared up at the three girls, Madison, Sophia, and Emma. Where Madison was cute, a late bloomer, Sophia and Emma were the type of girls that fit the prom queen image. Sophia was dark-skinned with a slender, athletic build she'd developed as a runner on the school track team. Red-headed Emma, by contrast, had all the curves the guys wanted. She was good-looking enough to get occasional jobs as an amateur model for the catalogs that the local department stores and malls put out. The three of them were laughing like it was the funniest thing in the world, but the sounds of their amusement barely registered with me. My attention was on the faint roar of blood pumping in my ears and an urgent, ominous crackling sound that wouldn't get any quieter or less persistent if I covered my ears with my hands. I could feel dribbles running down my arm and back, still chilled from the refrigerated vending machines. I didn't trust myself to say something that wouldn't give them fodder to taunt me with, so I kept silent. Rough. Carefully, I climbed to my feet and turned my back on them to get my backpack off the top of the toilet. Seeing it gave me pause. It had been a khaki green before, but now dark purple blotches covered it, most of the contents of a bottle of grape juice. Pulling the straps around my shoulders, I turned around. The girls weren't there. I heard the bathroom door bang shut, cutting off the sounds of their glee, leaving me alone in the bathroom, drenched. I approached the sink and stared at myself in the scratched, stained mirror that was bolted above it. I had inherited a thin-lipped, wide, expressive mouth from my mother, but my large eyes and my gawky figure made me look a lot more like my dad. My dark hair was soaked enough that it clung to my scalp, neck, and shoulders. I was wearing a brown hooded sweatshirt over a green t-shirt, but colored blotches of purple, red, and orange streaked both. My glasses were beaded with the multicolored droplets of juice and soda. A drip ran down my nose and fell from the tip to land in the sink. Fucking, first of all, kill all three of them. Second of all, sue all three of them. Third of all, sue the school. Second of all, kill the teacher. Third of all, burn down the school. Never mind. Anyway, using a paper towel from the dispenser, I wiped off my glasses and put them on again. The residual streaks made it just as hard to see, if not worse than it had been. Deep breaths, Taylor, I told myself. I pulled the glasses off to clean them again with a wet towel and found the streaks were still there. An inarticulate scream of fury and frustration escaped my lips, and I kicked the plastic bucket that sat just beneath the sink, sending it and the toilet brush inside flying into the wall. When that wasn't enough, I pulled off my backpack and used a two-handed grip to hurl it. I wasn't using my locker anymore. Certain individuals had vandalized or broken into it on 4 different occasions. My bag was heavy, loaded down with everything I'd anticipated needing for the day's classes. It crunched audibly on impact with the wall. "What the fuck?" I screamed to nobody in particular, my voice echoing in the bathroom. There were tears in the corners of my eyes. "The hell am I supposed to do?" Well, first talk to the teachers, talk to your parents, maybe just kill them. Any of that would have worked. Anyway, I wanted to hit something, break something, to retaliate against the unfairness of the world. I almost struck the mirror, but I held back. It was such a small thing that it felt like it would make me feel more insignificant instead of venting my frustration. I do know that feeling. I have many times thought about breaking a mirror and then had that feeling of like, well, that'll probably make me feel worse, you know? There are reasons Taylor doesn't do anything about the bullying. All right, we'll find out, I guess. I'd been enduring this from the very first day of high school, a year and a half ago. The bathroom had been the closest thing I could find to refuge. It had been lonely and undignified, but it had been a place I could retreat to, a place where I was off their radar. Now I didn't even have that. I didn't even know what I was supposed to do for my afternoon classes. Our midterm project for art was due, and I couldn't go to class like this. Sophia would be there, and I could just imagine her smug silence. I mean, you can't go to class fucking soaked in it. You go to somebody and they send you home, I would think. Sophia would be there, and I could just imagine her smug smile of satisfaction as I showed up looking like I'd botched an attempt to tie-dye everything I'd owned. Besides, I'd just thrown my bag against the wall, and I doubted my project was still in one piece. The buzzing at the edge of my consciousness was getting worse. My hands shook as I bent over and gripped the edge of the sink, let out a long, slow breath, and let my defenses drop. For 3 months, I'd held back. Right now, I didn't care anymore. I shut my eyes and felt the buzzing crystallize into concrete information. As numerous as stars in the night sky, tiny knots of intricate data filled the area around me. I could focus on each one in turn, pick out details. The clusters of data had been reflexively drifting toward me since I was first splashed in the face. They responded to my subconscious thoughts and emotions, as much of a reflection of my frustration, my anger, my hatred for those 3 girls as my pounding heart and trembling hands were. I could make them stop or direct them to move almost without thinking about it, the same way I could raise an arm or twitch a finger. I opened my eyes. I could feel adrenaline thrumming through my body, blood coursing in my veins. I shivered in response to the chilled soft drinks and juices the trio had poured over me, with anticipation and with a little fear. On every surface of the bathroom were bugs, flies, ants, spiders, centipedes, millipedes, earwigs, beetles, wasps, and bees. With every passing second, more streamed in through the open window and the various openings in the bathroom, moving with surprising speed. Some crawled in through a gap where the sink drain entered the walls, while others emerged from the triangular hole in the ceiling where a section of foam tile had broken off, or from the open window with peeling paint and cigarette butts squished out in the recesses. They gathered around me and spread out over every available surface, primitive bundles of signals and responses, waiting for further instruction. The Bug Master. She's like the Roach Man from Powerpuff Girls. My practice sessions, conducted away from prying eyes, told me I could direct a single insect to move an antenna or command the gathered horde to move in formation. With one thought, I could single out a particular group, maturity, or species from this jumble and direct them as I wished. An army of soldiers under my complete control. It would be so easy to just go carry on the school, to give the trio their just desserts and make them regret what they had put me through, the vicious emails, the trash they'd upended on my desk, the flute, my mother's flute they'd stolen from my locker. It wasn't just them either. Other girls and a small handful of boys had joined in, accidentally skipping over me when passing out assignment handouts, adding their own voices to the taunts and the flood of nasty emails to get the favor and attention of these 3 prettier and more popular girls in our grade. I was all too aware that I'd get caught and arrested if I attacked my fellow students. There were 3 teams of superheroes and any number of solo heroes in the city. I didn't really care. The thought of my father seeing the aftermath on the news, his disappointment in me, his shame, that was more daunting, but it still didn't outweigh the anger and frustration. Except I was better than that. Just fucking tell the authorities. With a sigh, I sent an instruction to the gathered swarm. Disperse. The word wasn't as important as the idea behind it. They began to exit the room, disappearing into the cracks in the tile and through the open window. I walked over to the door and stood with my back to it so nobody could stumble onto the scene before the bugs were all gone. However much I wanted to, I couldn't really follow through. Even as I trembled with humiliation, I managed to convince myself to pick up my backpack and head down the hall. I made my way out of the school, ignoring the stares and giggles from everyone I walked past, and caught the first bus that headed in the general direction of home. The chill of early spring compounded the discomfort of my soaked hair and clothes, making me shiver. I was going to be a superhero. That was the goal I used to calm myself down at moments like these. It was what I used to make myself get out of bed on a school day. It was a crazy dream that made things tolerable. It was something to look forward to, something to work towards. It made it possible to keep from dwelling on the fact that Emma Barnes, leader of the trio, had once been my best friend. Oh shit. This is just like a Spider-Man octopus girl. But like a little darker. You know, reading this again after having read that shitty fantasy book, this is much better than that. This is substantially better than that fantasy book we read before. Like, the emotions are really heightened. I think when I read this the first time, bullying stories, I tend to not be that into because they're all kind of the same. Like, it's pretty much always like, yeah, okay, some assholes in school are fucking with you, and I'm too much of a pussy to do anything about it, or I'm going to become not as much of a pussy anymore and do something about it. Like, it's always going to be in that the bullying in this story goes super far, by the way, has long-lasting repercussions and is never entirely just resolved. Yeah, that seems, again, bullying stories, they're all kind of like, so when I say this, I'm thinking, I guess, because Japan has a lot of them, right? Like going back all through anime history, and it comes in different forms. It's not always just school bullying, but like I would consider a lot of 70s anime, like even The Rose of Versailles. A lot of it is about like Marie Antoinette getting bullied by the aristocrats around her, or like Onisama A from the same director, and Ianaki Ko from the same director. All these Osamu Dezaki works that heavily were just like characters just getting fucked with all day. Kaleido Star. There's this one skiing manga from the same creator as Elfin Lied that's just like, it's like a sports manga if the character was constantly getting bullied and abused by everybody around them. And like, I understand that these dynamics exist in the real world and stuff, but like, it's just such a dark and festering place to spend as a story. And again, it's always the same. Bullying stories are always the same. So like, if you know the story, for me, I grew up being bullied. I know the story, but also I was never bullied to this extent because I moved so often. I think it actually was the one benefit of it. Nobody ever knew me well enough to figure out, to like think that they could treat me this way for a long period of time. And by the time I was in high school, everyone assumed I would shoot up the school if they bullied me. And they were probably right. If I had been bullied, I probably would have, like, I put up such a threatening aura in high school. Nobody wanted to fuck with me at all after like 10th grade, So yeah, rightfully so. They luckily the environment responded to me the way that it needed to, as opposed to pushing me further, like what seems to be happening here. But also, why would they think this girl would be dangerous if they don't know about her powers, right? They have no reason to think they can't just bully the shit out of her. The scale gets insane with ridiculous amounts of destruction and toward an apocalypse. Damn. Yeah, it gives me Chronicle vibes, the movie Chronicle, like, angry, bitter, bullied kids version of a superhero story. I think what I like the most about this chapter is the kind of, it feels immediately like the question is, will she become a hero or a villain? Because she has all of the motivation to become a supervillain, and her desire to become a hero doesn't necessarily mean that she can succeed at that. So I have to assume that what this story is going to be about is like someone trying to be a hero, but finding themselves painted as a supervillain for what they're trying to do heroically because the social structure itself is bad and protecting and abetting evil. That's what I would bet that this story is about, just based on that chapter, because it had thematic richness and poeticism in its writing in a way that fantasy story was totally lacking. It suggested nothing about what it was going to be about other than magic and breath, So yeah, this comes off way better than that by comparison. All right, I have to piss. So I'm going to put on a video and I'll be back. And if anybody's got another request, go ahead and throw that in the request thing. Let's see if there's any new videos out. Doesn't seem like it. It's just people talking about the Trump thing none of us care about. Let's go to the culture playlist. Wow, I have to pee really bad. I gotta get this figured out quickly. I gotta get this figured out so I can go piss. I'll just throw on this fucking long ass Steve M video. Then no matter how long I'm gone, it won't matter.
I wouldn't be here without Ultraman. I'd be doing something completely different. Seeing it had a significant impact on me. Hideaki Anno, a director who would shake the pillars of otakudom and define how those fans interact with the medium. But what is it to be an otaku? Even before this term was popularized, the media would treat these types of groups with disdain.
What do you think about the criticism that anime is for obsessive maniacs?
No, that's embarrassing. Because I am one. People who call themselves maniacs watch so many things. It is possible that they become biased, but on a technical level, they have keen appreciation. But we can't make a good work if we only pander to such people.
Through this mentality, otaku became a divisive term with different definitions depending on who you ask. The media sort of made it a stigmatized label for people who are obsessed with anime, video games, and manga, who are also, out of touch with social reality. I generally prefer the children of media definition, which also relates to Anno. In my house, we had one TV, and the rest of my family wanted to watch Heidi, but I wanted to watch Yamato. That was how it first pulled me in and got me devoted. I went out and proselytized for it. I told all my schoolmates, watch Yamato. They could always catch Heidi on the reruns. Or maybe not. Anno's involvement started as he delved into 8mm fan film during his high school years, spiraling out from there. I became an animator by chance, really. It didn't happen by my will. Before I knew it, I was an animator. While goofing off, Anno became enamored with paper animation, only choosing his university because it lacked a scholastic test to join. Osaka University of Arts is where he could draw to his heart's content while making his sci-fi works. In a way, it would set things in motion and change everything. There was an event called Daikon Free, the 20th Japanese sci-fi convention. I got an offer to do the opening animation. I wasn't interested, but Yamaga was very enthusiastic, and he wanted to do it. Hiroyuki Yamaga was one of Anno's classmates and a founding member of Gainax. He would set up a meeting with one of the sci-fi organizers. They went to a place called Solaris, a sci-fi themed cafe.
They say that you can make anime. What kind of stuff can you do?
During Takeda's shock, Yamaga passed out from holding his breath too long. It's fair to say these boys were not the most professional, and they had zero clue how to even create cell animation. So who's on the team? Well, Yamaga became the director. Hideaki Anno and Takami Akai were the two main members. Anno drew the mecha and special effects, where Akai drew the characters and most of the motion. Akai didn't seem to love the idea, but he thought maybe he could actually get paid, which is better than studying. So they went to the shops and they bought a single cell, right? And then they took it to a vinyl yard and they asked them if they got anything kind of close to it. And they basically bought a whole roll of see-through vinyl sheets. Now, there's a problem. Vinyl sheets aren't cells. So while they could paint on them, they'd stick together all the time and the paint would start peeling off them. Now, they didn't really have a choice in the matter, but it did make the process twice the pain. Once more, they didn't divide the production into different stages. Okada would discuss things with Anno and Akai and Yamaga. Between the four of them, they'd lay it out, and they'd have a general outline. And that's really how it went. I mean, it was homemade anime after all. In April of '81, they started the line work and moved that all the way until June, where they started painting, which went until the actual day of the convention in August. The story aligns with the aspirations of these young creators, everything against them, almost destroying them along the way. But their dedication to the project beyond the know-how let them force their way through with sheer willpower. It's this creative chaos that would define the foundation of their future studio, one defined by such bold minds as Okada here. The eye gauge is just weak. It's got no impact. We should definitely have it form like a stylized version of a girl's pussy. Now that would have impact. We need something that's never been done before. Otherwise, there's no point in doing it at all. This man would be later known as the Ota King and became the president of Gainax. Thankfully, his plans were rejected by everyone universally. The original vision arrived intact to the convention, beloved by all. It explored what kind of art the children of media could create, like a window into the mind of Anno's childhood. The Daikon Girl especially being a shorthand version for Clarice from Cagliostro, who had become super popular among fan groups, especially post-Lolita boom. Not just in design, but in animation as well, Arno would emulate his idols, such as Ichiro Utano with his Utano Circus cut. I knew his name as a creator who had drawn great scenes in Gundam and Ideon. I wanted to work with him. I just wanted to watch his work. The eruption of sci-fi characters towards the end ignites the minds of young people. To think such a fan work can be done in cell animation, as if it were official, one which ends with a massive pun to boot. The Osaka convention left such an impact, impressing the god of manga himself, Osamu Tezuka, although he had one suggestion.
Well, there certainly were a lot of characters in the film. A lot of characters, however, there were also some that weren't in the film.
So of course there needed to be a sequel. Though there's a problem here. If the expo goes under, that's not happening. So they had to try and break even by selling a bunch of stuff. If that be 8mm versions of the movie or merchandise, anything to try and break even. But something miraculous happened. They actually made a profit. They sold everything out clean. And that gave Okada an idea for a new venture. Daikon also impressed Studio New, who invited the team to work with them. Super Dimensional Fortress Macross, their own mecha show. Prior, New had been made up of Gundam Dojinshi artists. This was a new decade, truly, where the fans were in the pilot seat. I decided to study professional methods. For that reason, I worked on the Macross TV series. When special effects work calmed down, I was working under Mr. Itano. I was so surprised to see how sloppy professional animators' work was. I was studying by observation at the time. Then Mr. Itano showed up and piled up the cuts. He said, you can choose any of these cut bags and then retouch it. Arno spent 3 months at Studio New, where he met several new animators.
Arno walked around the studio in bare feet and regularly talked so loudly to himself that he could be heard across the room.
I've got it! The timing of Itano's explosions!
He loves to draw mecha.
I mean, he did, but Arno couldn't put all his time into Daikon 3 as he was working on a Sentai fan project at the same period. This time, though, things were different for Daikon 4. This was not a fan project anymore, it was an industrialized one. They really were going to bring it to the next level, as they were going to put the investments of the last project into this one to make it the biggest thing yet. And of course, the audience would be expecting it after the last showing, so they had to really up the ante. They had over a year to do it, and they rented out a whole studio, an old sewing house that they filled to the brim. It was a literal sweatshop as they worked through the night in the summer heat. If that wasn't enough, Okada was running pieces in magazines begging readers to join the production. They were running out of money too after buying way too much paint. 250 pots. Now, to put that into perspective, the next year's Nausicaa needed about the same amount for 2 hours of film, not 5 minutes. The final nail in the coffin, though, was having to buy the actual cells this time. It was too much of a pain to do it the old way. So they had to find other ways of cutting costs.
Hey, Mr. Director, do you think we can make it 60mm?
And where do you think we have it in the budget for that?
We'll shoot the left and right halves on each frame on 8mm, and then we'll scotch tape it together later. Scotch tape is transparent, so it won't be visible. 8 times 2 is 16. So that's how we'll make it 60mm. Thankfully, they didn't do that. And however messy the behind the scenes of Daikon 4 was, the animation speaks for itself. The whole piece starts with a redrawn recap of the original short, now stylistically consistent with the look of the fourth, which is a serious dedication. It speaks to the team's skill. Never has a bootleg music video felt so perfectly aligned with its track. A tempo of Twilight is kept. The animation just flows with a speed and density. Every frame is stacked, full of more pop culture references than you can catch. While there's a genuine love with much of what's shown, they don't deify as they move sharp between each, although the director did admit some of them were added more for obligation than admiration.
Back then, when we made Daikon 4, Star Wars was so popular. Since it was a sci-fi convention, we had to have Star Wars in it.
Yet, with that mentality, they got to be creative with how they use different properties since they weren't precious, and that brings a playful edge. Ahead of the curve too, since every company now is trying to create mega crossovers, but they're bloated with cynicism in a way that needs to repeat the past, where Daikon is throwing the toys at the wall to see which ones make the landing. Albeit this format does lose the clear narrative of Daikon 3, but what it replaces with is fantastic animation sequences that are a step above. Now with the help of talent they met at Studio New, drawing in lingering trails before it became the fashion. Or this explosion, which is such a spectacle the creators couldn't help but reference it again in later shows on otaku culture. Arno has spoken himself about the magic of collaboration on the project. Everything about Daikon 4 went above and beyond, delivering in such a way where it's still talked about 40 years later, despite never having an official release, and being trapped in copyright hell all this time. The creators, though, must have a bright future ahead of them. Months later, Arno was kicked out of university for not paying his tuition fees, so now he was living from studio to studio in Tokyo. That wasn't until a friend of his, Maeda, showed him an ad for Miyazaki's new movie. It needed animators, and they were going to try and join.
Arnold came to see me. He said, "You want to do it, right? You want to do it, right? Let's go, let's go, let's do it, let's do it." And after some pushing, asking, "Please use us," then we were eventually accepted.
They were lucky that Studio News director, Mr. Takayama, used to work at Topcraft and was able to give them both a foot in the door. I still remember when I first met him. He sat cross-legged in a swivel chair, then he turned and faced me. And his first words were, "When do you start?" "Well, I'm still in Osaka, so not immediately." "What, you can't start tomorrow?" November through February, Arno slept under the desk with the cockroaches, gaining him a name of the Primal Man from Miyazaki, as he never wore shoes either. In the morning, when waking up from under his desk, there was a note on his table, and that included the instructions for today and Miyazaki's complaints from the day before. Although ultimately, Miyazaki did take a shine to the young Arno, giving him the finale cut, the God Warrior itself. Very bold for a rookie, but Miyazaki had faith that Arno could give strong images. Well, as long as it wasn't people, because he was apparently quite terrible at that.
"That's enough. Just draw the symbol. I'll do the rest. You're too inexperienced."
Drawing people notwithstanding, Miyazaki was right. His God Warrior was a crucial part of the movie and had such a specific style to it with its extra layers of shading, something Miyazaki shies away from. It's also the reason that they finished up late, but Nausicaa became a hit and basically created Studio Ghibli. Now, allegedly, Arno would use his position on the film Nausicaa and the cut of the God Warrior to try and pick up women. I wonder how that went. "Hey, babe, I drew this giant, grotesque, melty monster. You want to go on a date?" I'm sure he was a real hit with the ladies with that one. Mr. Miyazaki and Mr. Itano are those I consider my teachers. I brag to say I'm probably the only one in the world with that combination. I was greatly influenced, not just in the technical points of their animation craft, but in the mental portion of filmmaking. My posture on filmmaking is nothing more than an attempt to hang on the things I learnt from the two of them. Now, after the production was finished, producer Suzuki had an idea. He thought there was potential in Arno and that he should direct the sequel, Nausicaa 2. But Miyazaki thought otherwise. When Arno said, "Give me Nausicaa," Miyazaki ran away. Takahata was grinning watching it all. From here, Arno leapt onto Macross. These were the end of his party days as he migrated from cut to cut. Step 1, make some cool storyboards. Step 2, after that, make some cool production drawings. These sketches could practically fill a book. Memorizing how to draw Studio New mechas is an undertaking. It's hard to draw such a crazy amount of lines. Plus, I had to shade it. But now, step 3, it's time for a break. In February, I was too wiped out from Nausicaa to do much of anything. Suddenly, step 4, the schedule becomes tighter. This might come as a bit of a shock. About the touring, it was supposed to premiere in the last couple of weeks of August originally, but abruptly it was changed to the first week of July. Yikes. Step 5, nevertheless catch a cold and spend a month in bed. Oh, the woe is me. In April, I pushed myself too hard and slept like the dead the whole time. Sorry. Step 6, moving on, start scrapping sequences. As we hit crunch time, we had to scale down the production to stay on schedule. Sequences kept getting cut, one after another. Nevertheless, hit the jackpot. Actually, I only hit fever mode like 3 times. Damn it, my money. When the stress got too much for me, I blew off some steam playing pachinko. At last, prepared the final Gengar. Once again, I ended up being the only one who still had Gengar to submit at the end. And somehow, you got to the goal. Macross had made it to a film. Thanks for all the staff for the hard work. Arno seemed to be struggling by the end of the year. The life of a freelancer was a rough one after all. Meanwhile, in Osaka, the college students were graduating and Daikon's indie film productions wrapped up. It started to look as though the studio was about to fade away. Yet, from the ashes came a new studio, Gainax. Yamaga and Toshio Okada felt that it would be a waste just to disband the talent. They began to think about work beyond fan-made, a commercial project. There was this guy by the name of Shigeru Watanabe, whom they'd met through their contacts at General Products, Okada's company. He worked for Bandai, and they approached him about a Gundam spin-off based on the newly released Gundam Suit Variation kits.
They brought out some Gundam plastic models, and they had these characters named Johnny Ridden and Shin Matsunaga. So we went to Bandai and asked if we could have made an OVA based on those guys.
Bandai may have rejected them, but that's not where the story ends, as they also had a plan to do a 30-minute sci-fi OVA, and the timing was perfect. The president of Bandai was looking to expand their anime productions, so their original pitch for Royal Space Force turned from an OVA into a film with a budget of roughly $3.5 million. That's a big deal for something that wasn't based on an original franchise already. That's how Nausicaa got its money to make its movie. And Nausicaa was basically the pitch they were going for. After its success, they wanted to get a piece of that, along with the burgeoning video sales market. It may have been a risk, but Watanabe had his reasons, as Okada stated over here. Shigeru Watanabe, he still has a religion. He believes in Maru Oshii, just like Jesus Christ. In those days, in 1983, 1984, he asked everything of Mr. Oshii. Is it good? Is it bad? And if Mr. Oshii said, oh, it's good, so Mr. Watanabe would think, oh, it's good, I must make it, I must make it. Fortune smiled on Gainax, as not only did Oshii approve, but also Miyazaki himself. Watanabe had a meeting with him in the summer of '85. Miyazaki encouraged the project, saying, if you make it properly, I think you will be able to recoup your investment. That's how it was for the cast of Cagliostro. Still, this couldn't stop resistance within the company, so they needed to make a 5-minute pilot first. If the project was deemed salesworthy, they could do it. Arno traveled overseas for the first time for the purpose of conducting research for the film.
8, 7, 6,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The pilot was a success. Okada and Yamaga actually moved to the city to become professionals. They were big-time boys now, and they needed a equally impressive musician to work on their soundtrack. If Nausicaa got Harry Hosono to do a couple of beats, then they needed another member of Yellow Magic Orchestra, cue Ryuichi Sakamoto. This time, he's doing the whole soundtrack. He saw the storyboards, and he sat down to be the music composer. There's a bold variety of sounds in the mix, some contrasting with the pictures, others in complete unity as it flies away. Allegedly, Sakamoto didn't enjoy his time on the production, mainly because the looseness at which Gainax works didn't really suit him. He had timed things to the storyboard, and with Gainax, everything moved around a bit. The adjustment, the timing, the storyboards wasn't 100% what they'd actually see on screen. Now, Sakamoto might not have been too bothered about that if he could have adjusted the timing himself, but there was a problem, an internal power structure, you could say, because Sakamoto never actually spent any time in the studio. In fact, he was working on a different movie soundtrack at the same time, and the studio was getting told what he wanted through his record label. Ultimately, the sound director got full power on the production and decided where the music went, and sometimes that involved just throwing his music wherever and cutting it down or just fading it out real quick.
Dekata, hot Dekata. Get it while it's fresh and hot. Hot Dekata.
Now, that was the least of their worries as Bandai became difficult to work with, as they saw there's a lack of toy potential here. So they kept trying to cut things out of the movie.
In Gainax, no one ever refers to the film as The Wings of Hermes. To them, its one and only title is the original one, The Royal Space Force. But Bandai said to us, if you really want to call it that, that's fine, but we'll stop our involvement with it. So we had to think about another title. For them, a good title was Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind.
You know, it was 2 hours long, so that means it could be played 8 times in a theater in a day. But, you know, if you cut like 20 minutes of it out, you might be able to get a lot more potential out of it and up the revenue, if you know what I'm talking about. More showings a day and all that. It's a slow mood piece. There's some wonderful sparse scenes, full of the middle-class malaise and apathy, characters without purpose, just passing through life. And that wasn't exactly what Bandai wanted. Gainax producer Okada once said,
the screenplay is not very strong. Our goal at first was to make a very realistic film, so we couldn't have that kind of strong dramatic construction you'd find in a Hollywood movie. Wings was an art film, and at the time I thought that was very good. But now I look back and realize this was a major motion picture. Bandai spent a lot of money on it. It was our big chance. Maybe we'd given it a little stronger structure, a little simpler story. It could have met the mainstream. And ordinary people would have been like, oh, it's a fantastic movie, a good movie. But it ended up as an art film.
Whatever can be said of the script, it's also important to state how much this story is non-verbal, even if that can lead to some vague characterization. In ways, it does remind me of Isao Takahata's pulled-back style, but it can be confusing at times. But always beautiful. The backgrounds have these small, vivid animated moments. Yes, they can be a distraction from the actual conversations taking place, but they sure do make the world feel bigger than it is. The director felt the project was ultimately a success, and it was quite critically acclaimed for its time. Arno felt similar, as he was the animation director. He had a lot of control over the visual side of the machinery. He avoided drawing it cartoonish. He wanted a grounded sense in the planes, even going as far to get training with the GDF to see it firsthand.
Yes, that was my best time as an animator. Even at the time, it was a job I was quite satisfied with.
It isn't Gainax as we know them, somberness with bursts of action, almost to a jarring degree. But I admire that they would even try it, especially considering they had a blockbuster amount of cash. Gainax is bold, and this was a big first step, followed by others like Akira, big budget, high concept, strong vision. Now, the film wasn't a huge hit when it came out, but it wasn't exactly a flop either. It played all the cinema showings it was supposed to, and sometimes for a slightly extended run. But it is important to mention that the film didn't actually make a profit until 1994, 7 years after it was made. While the future of Gainax looked murky at best, the production was really only supposed to exist to make Royal Space Force, but now they had a relationship with Bandai, there was potential to pitch other projects. If Gainax could come up with an anime that would sell at least 10,000 copies, then Bandai would gladly fund it. Upon hearing this, Okada worked on the proposal for Aim for the Top, also known as Gunbuster, but it fell into development limbo because no director was attached to it. At the time, Arno was working closely with Studio Graviton, but something in Yamaga's script drew him in and back to the studio. He needed to direct it.
I wrote the base story, then I gave it to Yamaga, and I told him to write the screenplay, and Yamaga said,
Okay, this is my kind of work. But don't hope for a good screenplay. I'm going to make a stupid robot girl anime.
And I said, like, okay.
Yet it was the scientific concepts that drew Arno in, the time dilation, the theory that time passes faster on Earth than it does for those in space, reminding Arno of an old Japanese folklore piece. But forget the string theory or whatever, they were working on a shoestring budget. Both of their productions at that time were bankrolled by Bandai, and since their last big project didn't perform, Gunbuster was relegated to side project status.
I was devastated when our first work, Royal Space Force, failed. The people who watched anime don't want that kind of work. It was a failure in terms of advertising strategy, even for some people who don't watch anime. So I made Gunbuster with the irony Okay, people want to see robots and half-naked girls go into space. He was playing to the gallery. As producer Okada stated, Project A-ko was what the anime fans at the time were looking for. So they kind of did that. With Gunbuster, I tried to show something different that could be created by doing robot animation. Also, negative opinions about parodies and such were becoming more and more widespread. So I wanted to try and show that even parodies can become a methodology. Never is to show quite as much a parody as in episode 1, all but condensing large chunks of Aim for the Ace into it. And not just the beats, but the directing style of Osamu Dezaki. However, the rest of Gunbuster wasn't concerned with do-overs. That was only a starting point for its metamorphosis. Comical youth all the way to melancholic adulthood. Noriko would return to Japan a stranger out of time. After the war, everything had passed her by, leading her once again into the fray. Transformed from the scared schoolgirl through the discipline of sports manga, not to mention 80s montage, we see a slow growth of courage which creates that Gainax spirit. The influence of Captain Okita was very big. Goro Naya's voice telling us to overcome our fears and believe in tomorrow. I said, yes, that's it!
いいか、古代。ここで今全滅してしまっては、地球を守るために戦う者はいなくなってしまうんだ。明日のために、今日の屈辱に耐えるんだ。それが男だ。
みんな今まで何のために生きてきたのよ。私たちは必ず勝たなきゃいけないのよ。お願い、カズミ、戦って。
The ultimate beautiful fighting girl at the end of the galaxy. But what use are bold speeches without larger-than-life music to accompany them? Kohei Tanaka was a composer with ties to big Toei franchises. He was told to be Vangelis, basically, of Blade Runner fame. And the spirit of that music is deeply set in those Moog synths, while marrying it with overblown orchestral next to a 80s pop sheen.
Mm. でなんか2人でもってワンナさんがパスタビームって言うとそれの後ではっはっとかって息しちゃったどうぞって言われてどうぞって言われてもらおうって思いながらじゃあ私もパスタビームこれでいいですか
It isn't a wholly serious work, but tone was contested back in the day by fans, wondering if Gunbuster was a parody or not. There are two impulses that arise when you make animation. One, this is a
Hello, good morning, Lapusha. We are still reading. You got here at the perfect exact time where I just came back from not being here for like 15-20 minutes and just playing that video. So perfect timing.
Contains graphic language, dark comedy, unique intelligence, creativity, a high credit score, and high blood pressure when triggered. This program has also been accused of racism, violence, misogyny, mansogyny, feminism, MGTOWism, defacement of celebrities, and of course, being a bully. Welcome to Thought Crimes.
If you're wondering why I took so long to piss, it's because I also woke up Bert and told him that the president had been shot, and then caught him up on that situation.
Welcome to Thought Crimes, everyone. This is your girl, Sincere, and I'm here with...
Hey, yo, this is your man, P. Solo, Prince Solomon in the building, ladies and gentlemen. And, of course, you know, guys and gals and everything in between, wherever you are right now, all eyes are on Donald, Tupac, Shakur, Trump, 50 Cent, Curtis Jackson. Okay, folks, we are covering the situation right now. And again, later on at what time Sid is going to be on?
At 9 o'clock p.m., we're going to have our Patreon stream on this where we can be raw and 100% truthful. We have to audit ourselves on for this professional one on YouTube. But come to the party at 9 o'clock p.m. where we talk about the real situation. on our Patreon
Yeah,
at 9 o'clock
LaPusha,
p.m.
Trump
on
got
Patreon
shot in the
exclusively.
ear.
Yes, you know, so we have to
like
be
an hour
like
ago.
the professional hit here. All right, listen, all puns intended. Listen, folks, as you all know, yesterday we was just roasting. Sin and I had kind of like a throwaway stream. It was kind of like one of them classic popcorn streams that we used to have a long time ago. And we was actually covering Captain America, A Brave New World. And I was telling Sin, I was like, man, that's funny. The day before that, about the musical group Fringe. I was listening to A Brave New World on Spotify. And then it seems like the trailer dropped to the Cap movie. And when they showed Harrison Ford, you know, an assassination attempt by, we talked about the Negro slave shrimp that shot at him, the original Captain America. You know, in the back of my head, I said, well, you know, I don't know about all of this type of energy right now. But look, when we talked about where the country has been heading, and even if, you know, we talked about astrologically as well, Be More has covered.
Oh
Sin has
shit, you're
covered.
right.
Even
LaPusha,
before then,
I forgot LaPusha already paid for those Ruby episodes. Shit. What were the 2 episodes? I know they're the last 2 of season 1, but come on. No time codes. Someone maybe time codes. Nobody. Ruby fan base, really? Nobody time coded it? I know they're the last 2, but what are the last 2? What are the numbers? Oh, no. Okay, we saw this shit, right? We saw this shit. I don't remember the boats. Did we make it to the boats? Is this where... I remember this.
Wrong.
Okay. This should be the last 2, then. Did they always have sitcom music in this show? Feels like I'm at the start of a Family Guy episode.
Absolutely wonderful. I don't think I've ever seen you smile this much, Weiss. It's kind of weirding me out. How could you not smile? A festival dedicated to the cultures of the world. There will be dances, parades, a tournament. Oh, the amount of planning and organization that goes into this event is simply breathtaking.
Ellen, there is no listening to the OP one last time, okay? I'm going to finish this, and then at some point I'm going to look up Ruby OP1 10 hours version, and I'm just going to leave that going for the rest of the day.
You really know how to take a good thing and make it sound boring.
Quiet, you.
Remind me again why we're spending our Friday afternoon visiting the stupid docks.
Oh, they smell like fish. I've heard that students visiting from Vacua will be
Yeah, if anybody wants to see my live reaction to Donald Trump getting shot, it happened at whatever time it happened. I reacted to it live, so you could go. Well, not live, but like 1 minute later. It is in this video we're in right now. It is in this stream, so you can go back and see it. I should probably like put that on screen somehow, like Trump shot reaction at time code. Surely somebody will clip that. I assume. It seems like a worthwhile clip, especially because I called it fake and stuff, so it's pretty funny.
arriving by ship today. And as a representative of Beacon, I feel as though it is my solemn duty to welcome them to this fine kingdom.
She wants to spy on them, so she'll have the upper hand in the tournament.
You can't prove that.
Oh my God, Black
Whoa.
spoke. I was like, whose voice is that for a second? Oh, right. There is a 4th character.
What happened here?
Robbery. Second dust shot to be hit this week. This place is turning into a jungle.
That's terrible.
They left
That's
all
racist.
the money again.
Huh?
Yeah, it just doesn't make a lick of sense. Who needs that much dust?
I don't know. An army?
You thinking the
I don't know, an
I'm
army?
thinking we don't get paid enough.
This motherfucker need to pull the
The
marshmallows
white
out of his mouth.
What an awful bunch of degenerates.
What's your problem?
My problem?
Yeah, what's up?
I was gonna tell you, I don't know what you got going on tonight or anything. But don't take all the ice because I need it for a ride tomorrow.
Okay.
Sometimes you gotta
Yeah,
take
I'm
all
not
the
going
ice.
nowhere tonight.
Okay.
So
I simply don't care for the criminally insane.
The White Fang is hardly a bunch
Oh, hey.
of psychopaths.
Oh, cute ponytail. Show your cute ponytail. No. Bend down so everybody can see your face. Look at you. You're a cute ponytail haver. What's up?
I just came to say hi.
This is your first time being on stream today, isn't it?
Yeah.
I always lose track of the time, the day.
I was asleep. Did I miss anything?
I'm on the last 2 episodes of Ruby season 1.
Oh my god. Guess what? Nothing
happens. Have you seen this before?
Stuff happens. And then yeah.
Where are you going? What are you doing?
The bathroom and I'm grilling.
Oh, grilling. That's what I like to hear. All right. More Ruby.
So then they're very misguided. Either way, it doesn't explain why they would rob a dust shop in the middle of downtown Vale.
Blake's got a point. Besides, the police never caught that Torchwick guy I ran into a few months ago.
Well, like, I call her black because, like, Vice literally means white. Ruby is a color. I don't remember Yellow's name either. So as far as I'm concerned, they're black and yellow. Why would her name be Blake? Blake doesn't mean black. It just has a lot of the same letters. It doesn't even fucking rhyme with it.
Maybe it was him. That still doesn't change the fact that the White Fang are a bunch of scum. Those Faunus only know how to lie, cheat, and steal.
That's not necessarily true.
Hey!
This is such a ham-fisted way of doing racism because, like, all of the racism is like what they're being racist against is made up, but they're specifically using, like, the way people talk about specific races in America. So it's a little wild hearing it.
Hey, stop that fun! Thanks for the ride, guys. You no good stowaway. Hey, a no good
His son
stowaway would have been
Goku.
caught. I'm a great stowaway.
Except an adult.
Hey, get down from there this instant.
He just looks too old and big to be doing, like, would it not hurt his tail to have to carry that massive frame on that little tail? Like, is that not painful for him? Yellow is yang and yang means yellow also. I see. In what language?
Well, Lice, you wanted to see the competition, and
H
there
Bomber
it
Guy
goes.
turned his Ruby video into a video about BLM. That sounds hilarious. I don't think I remember seeing that one. Sounds very H Bomber Guy though. Lie, cheat, and steal. Is that a Tool reference or is it just a normal saying in English? It is a normal saying in English. Lie, cheat, and steal. The way the Tool lyric is referencing the fact that that is a phrase. There's also like beg, borrow, and steal is like a common English phrase. They're both kind of mean the same thing, you know.
Weiss?
I think beg, borrow, and steal is a lot more common than lie, cheat, and steal, but it's the same sentiment, basically. I think Tool chose those words because he wanted to be able to say, you lie, cheat, steal, you lie. Like really lean in on the lie, you know? You beg, borrow, steal, which wouldn't have the same impact, you know?
Salutations. Hello.
Are you okay?
I'm
No.
wonderful. Thank you for asking.
Do you want
This is like a gag from another show, but I don't remember what show. But I know I've seen like exactly this character introduction of like a character in like a precarious or like obviously not okay position, and they're like, "Are you okay?" And they're like, "I'm amazing," you know. Like,
get up?
I know I've seen this bit,
Yes.
but I don't know where.
My name is Penny. It's a pleasure to meet you. Hi, Penny. I'm Ruby. I'm
I'm
White.
guessing she's supposed to be like a robot or
Sure you didn't
something
hit your head.
because she moves even more awkwardly than
Yang.
anyone else
It's
does.
a pleasure to meet you. You already said that. So I did. Well, sorry for running into you. Take care, friend.
She's definitely giving robot pretending to be human.
She was
Nice boots.
weird.
They do all have good
Where did
shoes.
that
Maybe
phone
that's why
riff
this
raff
show
run
is so
off to?
successful.
What did you call me?
Oh, I'm really sorry. I definitely didn't think you heard me.
No, not you. You? Me? I don't know. You called me
This
friend.
predicted AI.
Am
I mean,
really your friend?
AI has functioned the same way for like as long as it's been a concept,
Yeah,
right?
sure. Why not?
I'm sure you're being funny, but
Sensational! We can paint our nails and try on clothes and talk about cute boys.
Oh, is this what it was like when you met me? No.
this is when you encounter a trans girl. Also, this setting and like the tone of this conversation and like the awkward 2D animation super reminds me of Dot Hack on the PS2. Dot Hack Infection, the first Dot Hack game. I never played any other one, so but this super feels like a Dot Hack Infection cutscene, especially like introducing a really awkward autistic character, which describes most of the characters in Dot Hack.
No, she seems far more coordinated.
So,
But Dot Hack is much more dissociative. This is more ADHD.
what are you doing in Vale?
I'm here to fight in the tournament.
Wait, you're fighting in the tournament?
I'm combat ready.
Forgive me, but you
She is
hardly look the
adorable.
part, says the girl wearing a dress.
It's a combat skirt. Yeah.
A combat skirt.
Wait a minute.
That was
If
a
you're
good
here
scene.
for the tournament,
I
does
like that
mean
they're
you know
they're
that monkey
homegirls
killed
now.
Rapscallion? The who?
The filthy faunus from the boat.
Why do you keep saying that? Huh? Stop calling him a rapscallion. Stop calling him a degenerate. He's a person.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is he
Would
her
you like me to
boyfriend or
stop referring
something?
to the trash can as a trash can, or this lamppost as a lamppost?
Damn, she's
Stop
really
it.
going in.
What? He clearly broke the law. Give him time. He'll probably join up with those other faunus in the White Fang.
Ugh, you ignorant little brat!
Yeah, hit her. Oh no. Damn.
How dare you
I
talk
thought
to
a
me
fight
like
was about to
that?
happen.
I am your teammate.
You are a judgmental little girl.
What
True.
in the world makes you say
What?
Joe Biden's about to go live on television.
Oh, Joe Biden gonna talk about what happened? Give me updates. Tell me what he says. I mean, he's probably gonna say, "I do not condone shooting Donald Trump."
He did say that in like a statement already.
Okay, well, that's good.
that?
I think we should probably
With
go.
the terrorist group?
Where are we
Solely
going?
based on his species makes you just as much of a scoundrel as you believe him to be.
So you admit it. The White Fang is just a radical group of terrorists.
That's not what I meant, and you know it.
I don't understand why this is causing such a problem.
That is the problem.
Landon,
You
that is a
realize
good
you're
description of
defending an
Vice.
organization
Bottom
that
tier
hates humanity,
Starbucks
don't
sorority
you?
white girl
the
for
faunus of the
sure.
White Fang are pure evil.
Oh my
There's
god.
No such thing as pure evil.
I can think of a
Why do you
specific
think they
Starbucks
hate
sorority
humanity so
white
much?
girl that she
It's
reminds
because
me
of people
of.
like
actually.
Cardin, people like you, that force the White Fang to take such drastic measures.
People like me?
You're discriminatory.
I'm a victim.
Yeah,
You want to
especially
know
after that
why
dialogue.
I despise the White Fang? Why I don't particularly trust the faunus? It's because they've been at war with my family for years. War as an actual bloodshed. My grandfather's company has had a target painted across its back for as long as I can remember. And ever since I was a child,
Black
I've
kinda
watched
looking-
family
hold
friends
on.
disappear.
That
Board
pose she
members
had was hot.
executed.
That was the first time
An
one of the characters
entire
looked
train
attractive.
car full of dust stolen. And every day, my father would come home furious. And that made for a very difficult childhood. No! You want to know why I despise the White Fang?
She's such a
It's because they're
privileged
a bunch of
bitch.
liars, thieves, and murderers.
Well, maybe we were just tired of being pushed around. I
Wait! Come back!
This reminds me a lot of Rurouni Kenshin. Early in Rurouni Kenshin, It's just kind of the story. Like, what's his fucking name? The guy with the Zanbato. Sosuke? His name's just Sosuke Sagara, right? Or Sanosuke? Sanosuke Sagara. Yeah. Sanosuke was like part of a government resistance group or whatever. And so like his people had all been wiped out by the government people, and he sees Kenshin as, you know, oh, you were the sword of the government who helped to annihilate my clan. And he's like, I have fully what's the word? Disavow. I fully disavow. And they become friends. I wasn't into the teacher. I don't like that shaggy hair look, like that. Just like, I just woke up, but I'm beautiful. Like, look, not a fan.
I knew you would look better without the bow.
Blake is trans, really? For reals? The hot one's trans?
Oh. She's been gone all weekend. Blake's a big girl. I'm sure she can handle herself.
Why?
Yang is the yellow one, right? So she 100% to me, her whole personality reminds me of, actually this whole show reminds me of, how many of you know about Renkin Sankyu Magical Pokan? This wolf girl, very, very famous for a pornographic animation made with her before, like, that's more popular than this show was. But like Ruby very much reminds me of this show in terms of like the, you know, 4 very colored designs, cute young girls with like a different gimmick, you know. We got the kind of gothy one, the sporty one, the main character one, and the classy girly one, you know. I would bet, based on the fact that that porn of this girl is in 3D, that the 3D animators that made this show were aware of Renkin. So this character, her personality reminds me a lot of Wolf Girl, and then her design and her personality as well, to an extent, reminds me of Miyako from Hidamari's Sketch. So in my brain, she's like a combination of the Wolf Girl from that other show, from Renkin Sankyu, and Miyako from Hidamari's Sketch. So I like her conceptually, but I think it's mostly because I think she is supposed to be that type of character, which I like. But there's so little of her. She does so little. It's hard for me to really care too much about her. She do be cute, though. I like this. She looks good in this shot. This girl just is, you know, she's just like a goofy, spastic kid in a gothy dress. Her personality doesn't match her attire in any way, shape, or form. Vice, you know, she's a white bitch through and through to the core. And on every conceivable level, she is a white bitch. And then Blake, so far all we know about her is that, you know, she's, I guess, got a punk background. You meant that Blake is metaphorically trans. Well, that's unfortunate.
Guys, come on. She's one of our teammates.
Is she? We all heard what she said. Twice.
Maybe she is, maybe she isn't. Either way, she's missing, and we need to find her.
A member of the White Fang, right underneath our noses. I just hope she's okay.
I'm going to turn the light on and close the blinds real quick.
So, you want to know more about me?
Finally, she speaks. Nearly 2 days and you're giving me nothing but small talk and weird looks. Yeah, like that.
Son,
this guy's kind of
are
hot.
you familiar with
But
the White
he's got
Fang?
a shitty personality.
I don't think there's a faunus on the
He's kind of hot the way Nero from Devil May Cry is hot, but not hot as much as Nero from Devil May Cry is hot.
planet who hasn't heard of them. Stupid, holier-than-thou creeps that use force to get whatever they want. Bunch of freaks, if you ask me.
I was once a member of the White Fang.
Wait a minute, you were a member of the White Fang?
That's right. I was a member for most of my life, actually. You could almost say I was born into it. Back then, things were different.
He might be
Yeah.
a nice guy, but he's just a little too rambunctious, immature for my taste, personally.
Ashes of War, the White Fang
Seems
was meant
cool,
to be a symbol
but,
of
you know.
peace and unity between humans and the Faunus. Of course,
He'd be a
despite-
friend, not a boyfriend. He'd be my boyfriend's friend, you know?
By being promised equality, the Faunus were subjected to discrimination and hate. Humanity still thought of us as lesser beings, and so the White Fang rose up as a voice of our people. And I was there. I was at the front of every rally. I took part in every boycott, and I actually thought we were making a difference. But I was just a youthful optimist. Then, 5 years
She
ago,
was
our leader
Antifa?
stepped down, and a new one took his
Okay, I understand how this ended up being made about BLM by H Bomber Guy, because if you were thinking of it as like this is all supposed to be commenting on like the current times, then I could see how you would make that leap. Because I immediately thought Antifa just because she had the black the bandana, and I could totally see that being what they were trying to comment on. But at the same time, I think Ruby is just a little more generic than that. I don't think it was really trying to speak on things that I don't know. I could be wrong. I'd have to hear what the writers had to say about this, I guess.
place. A new leader with a new way of thinking. Suddenly, our peaceful protests were being replaced with organized attacks. We were setting fire to shops that refused to serve us, hijacking cargo from companies that used Faunus labor. And the worst part was, it was working. We were being treated like equals, but not out of respect, out of fear.
It's not BLM. It's about anti-Irish discrimination since the creators be Irish. Even H Bomber Guy admitted that later in his video. Well, okay. There you go. Irish discrimination. That's interesting. Well, and because there's what is it? No, I'm thinking of yeah, don't the Irish have that that crazy nationalist group? Man, I can't remember. Landon said H Bomber Guy made me love James Somerton. Me too. I just want James to reach out so we can work together. James, I know you've seen my clips. I know you've seen me asking to work with you. And the offer still stands.
So I left. I decided I no longer wanted to use my skills to aid in their violence, and instead I would dedicate my life to becoming a huntress. So here I am, a criminal hiding in plain view, all with the help of a little black bow.
Okay, so this is about the plight of Irish Americans, you're saying, or Luna.
So,
right?
Have you told your friends any of this?
Blake! Blake! Where are you? Blake! Weiss, they're not helping. Oh, you know who might be able to help? The police. Ugh, Weiss. It was just an idea. Yeah, bad one.
Weiss, I think we should hear her side of the story before we jump to any conclusions.
I think when we hear it, you'll all realize I was right. And I think Weiss's hair looks wonderful today. Ah, Penny, where did you come from? Hey, guys, what are you up to?
She is really
Looking for our
adorable.
friend Blake.
Oh, you mean the Faunus girl.
I like her
How
face.
did you know that? The cat ears?
What cat ears? She wears a bow.
She does like tuna a lot. So, where is she? We don't know. She's been missing since Friday. That's terrible. Well, don't you worry, Ruby, my friend. I won't rest until we find your teammate.
She is easily
that's really
best
nice
girl.
of you, Penny. But we're okay, really, right, guys?
Ruby said a cab, indeed.
It sure is windy today.
So, what's the plan now?
I still don't believe the White Fang is behind these robberies. They've never needed that much dust before.
What if they did? I mean, the only way to prove that they didn't do it is to go to the place where they would most likely go to if they were to do it and not find them there, right?
The only thing is,
They
I
talk
have
about
no
sex.
idea where that would be.
Well, while I was on the ship, I heard some guys talking about offloading a huge shipment of dust coming in from
I know something about offloading it.
You're sure?
Thanks anyways. This is hopeless. You really don't care if we find her, do you?
Don't be stupid. Of course I do. I'm just afraid of what she'll say when we find her.
Huge shipment.
The innocent never run, Yang. So, Blake is your friend?
Yes, Penny.
But you're mad at her?
Yes. Well, I'm not. Weiss is.
Is she friends with Blake?
Well, that's kind of up in the air right now.
But why?
Well, you see,
I would totally cosplay Penny, not only because I think I actually have this body type, but also because I like moving in awkward robotic ways like this. This would be a fun way to be for me. This would be a fun existence to inhabit. It's the robot girl from Ruby.
Blake might not be who we thought she was.
Is she a man?
No, Penny. I don't know what she is. She didn't exactly talk to us before she decided to run off.
I don't have a lot of friends. But if I did, I would want them to talk to me about things.
Me too.
Did I miss anything?
Not really. They've offloaded all the crates from the boat. Now they're just sitting there.
Cool. I stole you some food.
Do you always break the law without a second thought?
Hey,
The weirdest part of this news coverage is that all of the anchors keep referring to it as
Incident?
an alleged assassination, possible.
Oh, okay. So they've graduated from incident
Possible
to
assassination.
possible
It's like, what do you
assassination.
think he was doing?
Yeah. I was just trying to say hello by way of bullet. Well, actually, I was trying to graze his ear. You see, there was a mosquito
straight
about to
hair.
bite. Yeah. He didn't realize how dumb that hair was making him look on the back of his fucking
What do you want?
alleged
still Ruby.
assassination attempt.
Why does this look better?
It's the second to last episode of the season.
Well,
Or maybe the last episode? I'm not sure. It's looked a little bit better with each passing episode.
I see.
I would say it's always making slight improvements as they figure out what the fuck they are doing.
I'm gonna go grill.
Okay, you have a good grill.
You in a cult or something? Okay, too soon.
Oh, I remember this. I remember this because just that whole sequence feels so incredibly like. It feels very Sega Dreamcast, but I don't think any Sega Dreamcast game would have been so low budget that they couldn't make any kind of a floor. Like there's no lines or just nothing, not like a texture, just anything to make this floor look like it's not just brown, you know? I understand this is fucking hard. This is fucking difficult shit for this very small team to do. And like there are it really what it's giving is Namco, right? Like old Namco, like the old Tales of games, like around the Symphonia era, games like Baten Kaitos, games published by Namco. They were always at this very little, like a middle tier budget. And I used to make fun of what I called Namco explosions because in like Tales of Symphonia and Baten Kaitos, I think there's a third one that but I can't remember which. I know in those two games, there's big dramatic moments where like a whole like a base explodes type shit, but it's animated with such a puny like, you know, that it totally robs all of the like drama out of the scene. That's how I feel about this. It's just like it's trying to look cool and it's conceptually cool, but the level they were able to pull it off at saps all the coolness out. It's just like, ooh, that looks shitty, you know, and ooh, it's trying to look cool and it's really failing. Oh no, you know, in a way that's entertaining and puts a smile on my face. So maybe it's oh yes. It also, it just, you can tell the universe just doesn't exist beyond this point. Like they tried to put like the faint semblance of a structure back here, and there's like some extra buildings back here, but they're kind of too far off. So it feels like that's another playset that's like sitting off in the distance, but like this playset clearly visibly ends right here, you know? So it's like this is the full extent of the model. It's very video gamey. Because with video games, you kind of expect that, right? Like you play Sonic Adventure 2, that's what this is. This is in the first boss fight in Sonic Adventure 2 when the fucking the helicopter comes down into the little square. That's why it made me think Dreamcast. But that looks so much better than this. Again, small team. I understand. Sometimes if the thing you're trying to do is too ambitious to make it look good, just don't do it. You know, I understand the sunk cost. At some point they had already built all this. But man.
Oh no.
Is that them?
Yes.
You can get pretty far into doing something before you realize that it's not going to be good. Sometimes, if you're really unlucky, it takes until you are in the final stage of animation before you realize this shot does not work. And we don't have time to redo it, and we need it for the story. So it's just going to look like shit.
Them.
All right.
Like them walking down that plank.
You really didn't think they were behind you, did you?
No, I think deep down I knew. I just didn't want to be right.
Hey, what's the
Landon, I
holdup?
think Canepa retired from
We're not
YouTube like a
exactly
couple
the most
years ago.
inconspicuous bunch of thieves at the moment. So why don't you animals try to pick up the pace?
This isn't right. The White Fang would never work with a human, especially not one like that.
Yeah, she's hot. She's the only hot one. Maybe it's just the outfit. It's
No,
something
you
about the way
idiots.
she stands
This isn't a
too.
leash. What the? Oh, for
Nobody move!
whoa! Take it easy there, little lady.
Brothers of the White Fang, why are you aiding this scum?
Oh, kid, didn't you get the memo?
What are you talking about?
The White Fang and I are going in on a joint business venture.
Going
together.
in,
Tell me
dog.
what it is, or I'll put an end to your
Going
little
in.
operation.
I wouldn't exactly call it a little operation.
Oh no.
Whoa. Sudden like mixed media? I mean, are those... I can't tell if those are animated or... It's like a very different style from the rest of the show. The
Leave her
explosions.
alone.
They're just like falling out. I like
You are
their
not the finest banana in the bunch,
Zelda
are you?
rolls. Get him. Oh, he's got a fucking... He is Son Goku. I knew it. Whoa, she can do fucking dashes. That dash effect is pretty cool. I've seen much worse. Alright, he's got guns in his things. Yeah, this is sick. Alright, I'm feeling it. I'm actually feeling it. Let's go. You're gonna get got. Uh-oh. People. Shoot him. Shoot him
Isn't it past
first.
your bedtime?
Just like gat him in the face,
Are these
then
people
pay
your
attention to them.
friends? Penny, get back!
God damn it. Hate when villains do that. Don't get totally distracted. Just shoot the guy you're shooting and then get distracted.
Penny, wait! Stop! Don't worry, Ruby. I'm combat ready.
Let's go. Oh shit. I remember this. Yeah, get it in. This is a sick fighting game character idea. that they're pitching here. I also appreciate that they revealed the obvious fact that she's a robot girl through fighting, you know, not like her saying it, but just doing a bunch of badass shit. Obviously, best girl.
How is she doing?
It's a shame that Blake is getting so completely overshadowed in her own arc. But I'm afraid Penny has completely stolen this show.
These kids just keep getting weirder.
The explosions look like they are either multiple 2D like explosion effects that are kind of like layered, or like they are just live action or something. I'm not sure what they did there, but it looks really weird. It looks fine. It's not like bad. It's just like, wait, what? How?
She doesn't actually wear a bow. She has kitty ears, and they're actually kind of cute.
Bryce, I want you to know that I'm no longer associated with the White Fang. Back when I was with...
Stop. Do you have any idea of how long we've been searching for you? 12 hours. That means I've had 12 hours to think about this. And in that 12 hours,
I've decided I'm a lesbian, and we're gonna make out right now in front of everybody. That's why I'm getting so close to you.
You
Never
don't
mind.
care?
You said you're not one of them
You had a
anymore,
chance.
right?
You blew
No,
it.
I haven't been since I was younger.
I don't want to hear it.
You're slow.
All I want to know is that the next time something this big comes up, you'll come to your teammates and not someone else.
Landon, were you trying to say that Penny is Starbucks girl? I thought you were calling Vice Starbucks girl because she comes off as the.
Yeah, Team Ruby is back together. I'm still not quite sure how I feel about you. Hey, wait a minute.
Horny.
Where's Penny?
You should know better than to go running around in a strange city.
Uh-oh, she's got a pimp.
Sir.
Penny,
who's the pimp?
Your time will come.
Oh my god. They really went the slow, sentimental ED route. I need to hear like a saxophone over this. You know, like some like.
Don't be disappointed. Don't let your heart break. Don't spend
Okay, this is long. Jesus Christ, this is too much. I'm gonna put my ass to fucking sleep. Oh, you're saying that she looks like the Starbucks logo. Oh, that the Starbucks logo though is like a mermaid. Yeah, it's like a mermaid with long hair. You're thinking of Wendy's. She looks like the Wendy's girl. If anything. I mean, even then, not really. But, you know. You think we missed an episode? What? How? That was like 25 minutes worth of... It started from here. Was there something missing from this playlist? Anyway, why do I have Hidamari sketch randomly pulled up? Because I was talking about how the blonde girl kind of reminds me of Miyako combined with the blonde girl from Renkin Sankyu Magical Pokan. Beep 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 beep. Or Luna says, "I loved this. Thank you for everything, Lapusha. One of us, Ellen, even made a Twitter post thanking you." Indeed. There seems to be a post-credit scene, though. Oh boy, really? Marvel, why did you do this? Why did you make it so nothing could just end with the credits?
How very disappointing, Roman.
This is the post-credit scene.
Didn't expect to see you guys so soon.
The real bad guy.
We were expecting more.
Oh, she's
from
hot.
you.
Hey, you were the ones who suggested working with those stupid
Did you
mutts
really
with the white
expect
fan.
a show with four
And you
female
will
main
continue
characters
to
and not
do
have a
so.
female main bad guy?
We have big plans for you.
I didn't think about it.
All we ask.
I didn't assume there would be a main
cooperation.
bad guy. I didn't assume a plot would ever actually manifest in this goddamn show.
Surprise, surprise.
Well, she's hot. Oy. All right, I think that's all the requests I've gotten so far. Whew. Yeah, it looks like. Well, hold on. Let's open up Cash App and make totally sure. Yeah, I believe I'm caught up on requests. How you doing?
Okay.
Are you grilling?
Yeah.
You already started the fire.
Yep, it's done. I mean, it's not.
It's done.
It's not done. It's.
Oh.
I don't need to be out there doing anything anymore.
I see. You're at the leave it in there and let it smoke phase.
Mhm.
Amazing. That was fast. Yes, Lapusha, you can absolutely pay for Manhunt.
Oh God. I might have to leave the room.
I pretty much expected to be reading it all day. I figured at some point you'd be here. It's right here behind me. This fucking ugly, rotten thing. Disgusting, vomit-inducing thing. We're on The Brat, right? Or did we already do that one? I think we might have already done that one. No. Yeah, we already read that. I think.
Someone quote tweeted that assassination video. This is a crisis actor. I recognize him from Home Alone 2.
That's a good one. I don't think I did read this chapter yet, did I? What chapter am I on? Was I on? I think we had just read chapter 1 of part 2, and that's it, right? Not chapter 2 of part 2? No, we read this, I think.
I don't know.
Diva down. Convicted felon Donald Trump has had an assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania. Multiple loads were shot at his head, but they did not slay. Send this to 50 of your cuntiest conservatives. If you get 50 back, grab her by the pussy. If you get 25 back, you dodged the bullet train. If you get 0 back, you're next. Fucking incredible. There were a lot of emojis in that I didn't know how to read. I think the turf chapter was the last one we read. The spitty turf.
Oh, that's so funny. I don't know if this was actually on Wikipedia, but I think someone like quick edited Donald Trump's Wikipedia page and under 2024 assassination attempt. On July 13th, 2024 at 6 p.m. EST, Twitch political commentator and radical left-wing transgender terrorist Destiny fired a single shot from a 9mm handgun at former President of the United States, Donald Trump. However, due to attempted assassin's low testosterone count, open parentheses, on account of the copious quantities of soy consumption, close parentheses. He lacked the muscular strength to keep the firearm steady and was knocked backwards, landing on his buttocks, which caused severe hemorrhaging of his rectum due to the shooter's riding with Biden TM butt plug being propelled into his rectal cavity during Jim's fall.
Incredible. It's 10 pages for the next chapter. Take 10 pages and aim. Hey, look, it's the stream schedule.
Wow.
Did you know I have a schedule now? See, look, every Saturday is reading day. Every Sunday is no promises day. Tuesdays and Fridays, we're going to marathon all of Simone. Wednesdays, I'm going to play Umineko. And then Thursdays and Mondays will be kind of a random, send me requests, and also I'll throw some movies in there type thing.
Cool.
I did it. I made a real schedule. I'm like a grown adult.
I don't know about all that.
I can do it. I can cosplay a grown adult by way of having a calendar in my life. Okay, what else was I about to show? I feel like I had another image. Oh, yeah. There we go. This image will disappear when I've collected $75 in the Golden Witch fired Venmo/Cash App accounts to pay for the Umineko bundle. Yeah, 50 Cent Trump. That's somehow the second time I've seen a 50 referred to as 50 Cent for this. Yeah, this isn't for Ruby. This is for Manhunt, y'all. This is for reading a sad, scary, awful book that makes you feel bad when you read it.
Okay, fine.
Bird's like, I don't want any of that, actually. I'll get out of here.
I don't like this book.
It's exactly as I just described. It's like The Boys for trans people, basically. All right. The Brat. The van rumbled down a dirt track cutting through thick forest. If nature was encroaching on Seabrook, it was dragging Exeter back into the primeval dark. Moss-carpeted fallen trees leaned against their living counterparts, strangler vines hanging from their branches like fat serpents basking in what little sun reached through the canopy of oaks and maples. Lady slippers, bruise-colored and vaginal, grew wild among the nodding ferns. Twice Fran saw a deer bound away into the gloom at the car's approach, and once a fat porcupine ambling through the underbrush as though out for a morning stroll. Fucking Redwall up in here, Beth muttered. She sat beside Fran in the van's second-row seat, her face still the color of milk so that her scars looked like raw liver against it. Spots of red stained the gauze taped over her cut cheek. The drive out of Seabrook felt like some kind of demented dream. That broadcast, Fran felt sure it had been Teach's voice, low, hoarse, and hypnotic, fuzzing the air, crowds watching the van pass with expressions still unleavened by time it would take them to absorb the change crashing down around their ears. Fear, pity, the kind of cold, dead hatred Fran had seen all her life hiding behind different eyes, in others something like loss. It's just gone. Indy's house, our work, all of it. The duffel that held their testicle harvest still on ice was stuffed under the bench seat. Their whole lives fit under a seat in a van. She looked back at Indy, who was slack-faced with car sickness, and Robbie, drumming absently on his thighs as he stared out the window at the greenery of the deep woods. They hit a bump and Indy closed her eyes, moaning softly. Robbie didn't seem to notice. Why did I try so hard to make him come with us? She watched the dappled light flow over his profile. He'd taken off his hat and his thick auburn hair was matted and cowlicked. She wanted so badly to run her fingers through it. I don't even know where we're going, really. I don't even know him. In the front of the van, the driver, a tall redhead in jeans and a Bruins windbreaker, downshifted as they hit a washed-out stretch of road, the van's tires throwing up sheets of water. The skinny, fat 30-something slouched in the passenger seat in mirrored sunglasses and a wife-beater stained yellow under her armpits, strawberry blonde hair up in a loose bun, said, "Slow down," in a tone of voice that left no room for argument. The driver did, muttering an apology, and they rattled on for a few minutes between thinning trees and then, without warning, out into a clear-cut stretch of bare earth dotted with stumps like rotten teeth. The field sloped up maybe a quarter of a mile toward a low granite ridge, above which it rose steeply through scrub pines and beech trees to a summit of bare rock. Set into the granite's sheer face was a massive concrete bulkhead, and set into the bulkhead was a rusted steel blast door 12 or 13 feet high and about twice as wide. Oh, what the fuck? Beth whispered, craning her neck to squint over the driver's shoulder as they crested a low rise. Fran saw it a second later. There was a camp at the base of the cliff face, a sprawl of sagging tents and shacks made of particle board and canvas and sheets of corrugated metal. People milled through it, alone and in listless clumps, turning now toward the van as it came up the track. Fran saw laundry strung on sagging lines and people roasting corn and squirrels over open fires. Their dull eyes followed the van as, slowing, they drove through the tangle of bodies and canvas. A few people stood up from around their cook fires. "There's a place for you if you want it," Indy had said. Was this what she meant? Don't be a spaz. She wouldn't do this to you. Glass shattered against the van's driver's side door. Fran screamed and lurched sideways into Beth, who let out a strangled hiss of pain. "Local color," said Pit Stains, turning to smile at them. "Dark yellow liquid sheeted down the window. Day laborers looking for work on our farms. They get bored waiting." Ahead, the blast doors began to open, a sliver of gloom growing between them. A double line of women stood at the mouth of the bay just beyond the threshold, their faces made snout-like by gas masks, scuffed plastic riot shields held in a tidy wall. Oh, fuck me. The guards parted ranks to admit the van. Fran could see their eyes behind the smoked plastic of their goggles. The tires made a low, contented purring sound over the smooth concrete of the bay. A dingy half-light engulfed them as they left the door behind and turned toward where a fleet of vehicles, jeeps and vans mostly, but she caught a glimpse of something sleek and red and European near the far wall, were parked. The sounds of the engine echoed in the gloom. They stopped. The driver threw the van in park and she and Pit Stains got out, the door alarm dinging rhythmically. Fran scrambled to follow. She blinked in the dim fluorescent lighting of the bay. The blast doors were closing, the bar of sunlight they admitted dwindling to nothing. The guards unmasked, shields coming down from ready position like a swarm of flies folding their wings. "This is fucked," Beth hissed as Fran helped her down. Robbie followed. He was back to watchful silence. Behind him, eyes downcast and mouth set in a grim line, Indy forced her way past the middle seat, one hip deforming against the corner of its backrest, and out the door. Fran saw the flicker of pain in the other woman's face as her knees took the shock of stepping down out of the van. Then she was the picture of composure. Car sickness vanished, long black skirt twitched into place, and her blouse and cardigan smoothed out with a few quick tugs. She'd been like that for as long as Fran had known her, as meticulous about her clothes, her hair, her makeup as she was careless about her house, as though she were a topiary, not quite static, but reliant on the illusion of it. Set into the bay's inner wall a few dozen yards away from the motor pool, a huge circular pressure door like something out of a submarine cycled open with a hiss of hydraulics. Through it stepped Sophie Whittle. She was doll-like, no more than 5'3", with pin-straight blonde hair and big, protuberant blue eyes that reminded Fran of a tree frog or a bush baby. She wore a navy romper and an open gold silk jacket with fitted cuffs that looked like it had probably cost more than Fran's tuition, at least back when money had mattered. Balenciaga, maybe, or Versace, the kind of things Fran had only ever dreamed of wearing. "You're here," squealed Sophie, hopping in place and clapping her hands. Her nails were manicured, perfect ombre ovals, shading from dusky pink at the cuticle to pale purple near the tips. She hurried toward them. "How was the drive?" she laughed, as though she'd told a joke. "Sorry, boring. You probably want to see your lab, your room? Okay, we'll just do the whole complex. Everyone calls it the Screw. You'll see why. Caitlin, can you get the golf cart?" Oh, I think it was Caitlin. She's trying to remember the name. "Can you get the golf cart?" Her gaze slid quickly along to the breadth of Indy's hips. No, get two. Dr. Varma can ride with me and you. She glanced at Fran, Robbie, and Beth. "Can follow. And you," she glanced at them, "can follow. Dorothy can drive you, right, Doe?" Pit Stains, leaning against the side of the van with an unlit cigarette in her mouth, inclined her head and transferred the butt behind her right ear. Sophie skipped up to Indy, seized the other woman's outstretched hand between hers, wrinkled her nose, and smiled in a way Fran found completely impossible to read. We're going to have so much fun. Robbie wanted to run. He'd wanted to run since waking up in Fran's arms, in her narrow twin bed in the hot, stuffy room over at Indy Resh's garage. He'd wanted to run while Sophie Whittle's women loaded the van with books and clothes and medical supplies, and he wanted to run as the women in the windbreaker drove them through the woods with Indiresh groaning and whey-faced beside him, her soft, spreading bulk looking somehow small and vulnerable in the bouncing vehicle. Now clinging to the safety strap in the back seat of a battered golf cart, he wanted worse than ever to bail and tear back down the long echoing hall to the motor pool and out into the camp beyond the blast doors, and to keep going until he forgot Fran's face, her voice, the furnace heat of her sleeping body. She sat beside him now, her guarded expression slowly softening as they whizzed in the lead cart's wake down a broad, arch-ceilinged hall from which countless rooms and corridors branched. He couldn't hear Whittle over the noise of the cart's electric motors, but already he'd seen a gym, a packed dining hall, and what he thought was a movie theater, electric lights, running water, the rattling hum of air vents sucking out waste heat. He'd expected a glorified fallout shelter. This was a company town. I'm a courtesy tacked onto a courtesy. If I asked, they'd let me out. Why keep me? Women watched from doorways in the sides of the corridor, dark clothes mostly, though once the incongruous bright white of squash outfits on two tanned and sculpted women, twins, coming out of what must have been a squash or tennis court. A glimpse of polished wood, the sound of rubber squeaking against its hard finish, clean sweat on smooth skin, and on past a line of chatting girls in matching floral print bikinis, towels wrapped around their waists and in beehives around their dripping hair. Beth, seated beside Dorothy on the car's front bench, clung white-knuckled to her strap as they followed Sophie's cart down the hallway's shallow slope, staircases cut from the raw stone rising to either side of what Robbie thought was a gallery or some kind of mezzanine. It looked like the atrium of an expensive mall. How many people live here? He craned his neck out of the cart to look up at the faces staring down the well at them. 200? 3? Fran's hand brushed against his. He glanced down at her slender fingers, her delicate wrist. She had, he noticed for the first time, a tattoo on the first joint of her index finger, the female symbol, a circle with a cross depending from it. Without thinking, he took her hand and raised it to his lips to press a kiss against the faded ink. The hall rushed past. Staring faces, stenciled numbers on the walls, the sound of someone crying. A blush rose in Fran's cheeks. She scooted toward him along the vinyl bench, slipping her fingers through his. I'm glad you came, she whispered. Something fluttered in his chest. Too much eye contact. Deep brown flecked with darker motes and thin red rivers of her veins. He felt giddy and slightly nauseous. He kissed her, tongue gliding over minty teeth, closed eyes, let the swaying darkness swallow him. Their rooms were small, compact cubicles branching off a side passage, at least one rotation down the bunker's corkscrew layout. Beth's and Robbie's on one side of the corridor, Fran's and an empty room on the other. Doe had dropped them off as Sophie's cart sped on down the curving slope, carrying Indy away to her new lab and offices. Now Beth, lying on her back on an Army-Navy surplus cot, chewed a plug of anise root and stared up at the mural on the ceiling. It was a man short and broad with skinny legs and rounded sloping shoulders. Pink petals, crabapple blossoms, she thought, stood out livid against his black skin and the coarse darkness of his hair and close-cropped beard. Part of his left calf and foot had been scraped away, and had some of his pockmarked face, one eye and part of a cheek eroded by a putty knife's rasping strokes. Beth wondered why whoever had started to remove it hadn't finished, and who had painted it to start with. She must have loved him, she thought. The root of the man's cock, thick and downward curving, was visible above a fan of delicate petals caught against his inner left thigh, a few tumbling over his quadricep and into the empty space of the whitewashed ceiling. It was too honest a painting to have drawn on some random subject. The slight swell of his belly, the pits in his cheeks, the weight of tight, dark curls above his prick. She touched him. She fucked him. She could hear Fran and Robbie talking outside in the hall, their voices faint, conspiratorial. Beth traced with a mental finger the high ridge of one cheekbone, the tight curls of his beard. Was he here when the world ended, or did the painter bring him in her memory? Everything hurt. It hurt so much, and she didn't know how long they'd let her sleep, or if anyone would come when she needed to shit or puke her guts out, or if she got thirsty and wanted water. She didn't know if tomorrow they'd throw her out to rot with the people at the gate in their canvas shantytown, or put her to work monogramming Whittle's towels. Why the fuck are we here? Running from the turfs? These people won't protect us. She wondered as sleep stole upon her if the man on the ceiling had been alone when he changed, or if someone had been with him. We've had so many problems with our e-supply, said Sophie, drifting aimlessly along one of the theater's workstations. Her slender fingers brushed against the casing of a frictionless centrifuge in which empty test tubes bobbed. Can you make enough for, I think it's like 70? I mean, obviously not just you. We'll figure out an assistant so you don't have to do it all on your own. Maybe someone from the camp to clean at least? 76, said Doe, who sat swinging her feet on the counter's end beside the bulky industrial freezer. She was sucking on a bright red popsicle, the first Indy had seen in years. Behind her, the sheer concrete walls rose to a wrought iron balustrade fronting steep, tightly packed tiers of seating. Bizarre for a clinic, but then the whole bunker was surprising. Too ornate, too big, too sprawling. It didn't feel at all like a little folly 2 billionaires had bought to hedge their bets against the end of the world. Maybe they were just stupid, overbought and overplanned. That's not a problem, said Indy. Her knees ached and a hot, tight knot of pain was growing in the small of her back, but if she sat now, they would remember her like that forever, weak, soft. So she stood and smiled through it. She had a whole drawer full of different smiles for when she needed them. Long term, we can talk about a hydroponic clover grow, producing and refining our own phytoestrogens, but for now, all I need is testicles and kidney lobes. My friends brought enough for maybe 120 doses. Each dose is good for a week, so we'll need to be hunting and harvesting at scale within 10 days. We'll need to discuss tea blockers too. Spearmint, black cohosh, licorice root. There are certain strains of soybean. Taking note of this. Spearmint, licorice root, soybean. Sophie snorted laughter, flashing her perfect teeth in an incredulous smile. Like soy face? Soy boys? That's real? Not the way people talked about it, no. The girl, she couldn't be older than 20, made a disappointed face, then grinned and swept an arm out to encompass the whole surgery, its workstations and freezer and canvas-draped equipment. So, you like it? Don't sit, don't eat. Her back felt as though someone had knotted ribbons of barbed wire around her spine. Ooh, my mom had a condition like this for a while. She had to have some surgeries about. She'd forgotten to use talcum powder before leaving Seabrook, and her thighs were chafing. Sweat caught between them and under the lowermost roll of her belly. She wished she was alone, free to lean naked against a work surface and let the dry, cool, recycled air that blew in through the theater's vents run over her. It looks perfect. Was it designed as a lab? It's big for that, is why I ask. Sophie plopped down on a rolling office chair and dropped her chin onto her fists, elbows on her knees with that slumped, listless flexibility that belongs only to the young and thin and careless. Marianne, my stepmom, wanted to train doctors or something. This whole place was supposed to be a university, like for rebuilding and shit. She teared up so immediately that Indy almost bent in to look for the glisten of menthol smeared under her eyes. But after Daddy, she was never the same. She couldn't. She took a steep, steadying breath and drew herself up straight-backed, hands folded in her lap. She couldn't adjust. She killed herself a few weeks after. I'm very sorry, said Indy, not knowing what else to say. The trip from Seabrook had left her tired and disoriented. She wanted to be left alone, to settle into the apartment of off the surgery and change into clean clothes, unpack her antifungal cream, see where Fran and Beth and that quiet mop-haired boy had landed. Everything had happened too quickly. 2 days spent dithering in her empty house, wondering how long she could wait before the turfs came knocking, how long she could stall with Whittle's people. They'd offered before in June of last year, and she'd turned them down. We're here because of me, she thought as Sophie stared off moodily at nothing. We're here because they couldn't take me with them, and they didn't want to leave me on my own, because they knew I didn't want to lose them. She hated herself then, hated herself with a cold, nauseous fire that she hadn't felt since the weight had come like a tidal wave after her 13th birthday, swamping her sturdy child's body in a flood of soft, rich womanhood. Like drowning in buttercream frosting. Every affirmation she'd ever spat at her reflection through her gritted teeth rang hollow now. Worthless noises absorbed by her bulk and stored for mocking recitation. Telling yourself what to feel is a brick wrapped up in silk. It looks pretty, but it hurts the same. Oh, in the chairs? Sophie asked, with that scalding combination of pity, disgust, and studious disinterest Indy knew so well. The furniture works? Armless, said Doe, sucking on the popsicle's stained balsa wood stick, like you asked. Indy pulled another smile out of the drawer. Yes, thank you. While women brought in Indy's boxes under Doe's hooded, watchful gaze, snapping gum and joking as they worked, Sophie led Indy to a pressure door recessed into the theater's north-facing wall. Indy tried not to feel the other woman's eyes roving over her body. So, you're a fertility specialist. Sophie said it as though she were setting up a joke. A fertility specialist, a cop, and a rabbi walk into a bar. In vitro prenatal health, premature birth care. I was a midwife before I was a doctor. Listening to white women babble about homeopathy and healing crystals while I cleaned up their shit and blood. Midwife, that's so holistic. The girl tapped a quick sequence into a palm-sized keypad, then bent to press an eye against the ocular scanner. With a buzz, the door's locking wheel spun and Sophie flitted through, leading Indy down a utilitarian hallway sloping down in another spiral. She flashed with a look over her shoulder. But you helped girls get pregnant when they had a problem, like the medical problem, cysts on their ovaries. Yes, many times. Bare bulbs hung from the ceiling. The air tasted dead. Indy's swollen feet protested every step, the straps of her Birkenstocks cutting into them. In the gloom, she felt acutely conscious of the friction between her broad thighs. Have you been trying long? They came to a second door, this one a plain slab of some dull metal. Another keypad, another code, locks, palm and ocular, hidden pistons hissing. Sophie bit her lip. Oh, there's no problem with me. With the right equipment, I can selectively implant female embryos, said Indy. If that's what you're worried about. Most male fetuses still develop normally, but the chance of a sharp spike in testosterone production is much higher. It's a side effect of carrying the virus. I'll monitor you closely, check levels on a regular basis. It's just a matter of time and patience. You want to roll the dice on your own kids eating their way out of you, be my guest. The door slid open. Fresh air washed over them, cool and sharp, and within, a dark room waited. A steel grate walkway ringed a square pit, pitch black, surrounded by a waist-high guardrail. Sophie hurried to the rail and leaned out over it, making kissing noises and extending a hand to the darkness as Indy picked her way out onto the ringing catwalk, vertigo caressing her with its long, feathery fingers. Overhead, banks of fluorescence buzzed fitfully to life. Sophie's fish face kisses echoed. Flat light and deep shadow washed over the pit, and Indy stepped back, breath catching in her throat, and found the door had shut behind her. With trembling fingers, she found its edge and dug her nails into the cracks. This isn't real, she told herself as the lights flickered on and off. The pain in her back and knees forgotten. Its shape reared up in flashing light and dark. The lights came on, stayed on. The man rose clumsily, almost bear-like, onto his hind legs and stretched up to butt his muzzled face against Sophie's hand. His long, slick black tongue slid through the wires and curled around her wrist. His hands were cuffed, the chain run through a steel ring bolted to the floor. It slithered, clinking as he withdrew his tongue and nuzzled Sophie's palm, a glottal purr bubbling up from somewhere in his chest. He was big, more than 6 feet, with a peeling underbelly and long, sinewy arms. Doc, this is Mackenzie. She scratched the stripe of coarse black hair that grew along his spine before moving to the scabby flesh of his throat, dead skin flaking under her nails. He twisted his thick neck. Sorry, that wasn't dialogue. He twisted his thick neck like a tabby cat, thought Indy, to show her where he wanted it. Kens, this is Dr. Varma. Those big blue eyes found Indy's. A shy smile curved the rosebud lips. She's going to help us make a baby. Whew. She's not just fucking a zombie. She's going to get herself knocked up by this zombie somehow. Incredible. That was a really good chapter. I like the way it bounced around perspective, kind of caught us up with all the characters, settled them into a place that feels temporarily comfortable, but in a way that obviously is so tenuous and like it's like too much. Like it's like, oh well, this obviously isn't sustainable. This obviously is going to collapse on itself, you know. And then you get to the heart of the whole thing, and like, you know, the rot is already inside. The yang's already in the, or the yin's already in the middle of the yang, you know. That was a good one. All right, I think that was the only request, right? Was there anything since then? No. Caught in the rain, again. Yeah, I think we're caught up. It's 9:11. I don't know how much longer I want to do this. I've been streaming for close to 8 hours today. So this might be about time to wrap up and go chill. Still haven't figured out if we're camping tomorrow. We would have camped tonight. But well, in any case, everybody get yourself hype for Umineko and Simone. This is how we're spending the month. Let people know. Anybody you want to watch Simone or Umineko with us, get them in. Everybody's got till Wednesday to get ready. Get your Simone download, get your fucking... I mean, you don't have to get anything for Umineko. Send me $25 to buy this game with. Anyway. That's it. All right. See y'all either tomorrow or the next day or whenever. I don't know.